Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 24, 2017 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Council members Agajanian.
Present.
Devine.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Mayor Garpetian.
Here. May I please have your report?
If we
Oh,
may,
flag salute.
thank you. Please rise for the flag salute, which will be led by Councilmember Agajanian.
Do the flag salute to the most recognizable flag in the world. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. Helen Keller, the great American social activist and author, who was born disabled, both deaf and blind, once reflected that, quote, optimism is the father that leads to achievement. As so many across our nation face the challenges of recovering from natural disasters and from tragedies caused by human cruelty and violence, it may seem too great a task to be optimistic, but we pray that the light that shines each morning through the rays of the sun to usher a new day also shine upon the path that leads each of us to optimism and allows us to continue our journey with those who are like-minded. We pray that our optimism leads us to achieve success in a wonderful city that we call home, where all flourish and remain prosperous and safe. We pray for the safety of those who serve our nation in our armed forces and pray for their families who must endure the hardship of being separated from their loved ones. Watch over them as you watch over us during these difficult and trying times. We pray for all this and peace tonight and always. Amen.
Amen. Okay. May I please have your report?
The agenda for the October 24th, 2017 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Friday, October 20th, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's next?
Under presentation and appointments at 3A is the agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, October 31, 2017.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor Garpetian, members of the City Council. Next week's set of meetings will start at 3 p.m. in the afternoon with the Glendale Housing Authority with just the approval of minutes on the agenda. City Council meeting again at 6 p.m. will start with a number of consent items. At 4B is a report from the Director of Public Works regarding the Western Avenue and Riverside Rehabilitation Project, followed by another report regarding traffic signal installations and modifications at various locations throughout the city. Under action items is another report from the Director of Public Works regarding the Safe Routes to School Improvement Project at Hoover-Keppel Toll Schools and the Chevy Chase Drive, followed by another report regarding contracts for parts and services for city-maintained vehicles with Ford specifically. 8C is a Director of Community Development regarding Glendale-Burbank Regional Streetcar Feasibility Study, and the final report for the night will be from the Chief of Police regarding a request for authorization to enter into a contract for medical services for police arrestees and inmates. That concludes next week's report.
Thank you, Mr. Takhtalian. What's next on the agenda?
3B is proclamation designating National Family Promise Week.
Okay. I have a proclamation. Who's going to receive it? They are not here, I guess.
I believe it was Alfred Hernandez, Mr. Mayor, if I'm not mistaken. I don't see.
Is Mr. Hernandez here? Okay. Well, okay. We'll move on to the next one, please.
Mayor and Council, at 3C is a proclamation designating Filipino American Heritage Month.
Okay. Who's going to receive the? Edith is here. Ms. Fuentes is here, and would you come up? Would you come up to the podium, please? Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. You're back. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, and staff, good evening. I am Marlene Cagatao from Coldwell Banker Hallmark, and I'm the current president of the Filipino Business Association of Glendale. And with us tonight are the FIBAG officers and past presidents and board of directors, Ruby De Vera, Butch Buado, Olivia Lopez, Joy Kiza, Edith Fuentes, and Nini Maldonado. Thank you very much for this resolution and for declaring the week of October 24th and 31 as the Philippine Heritage Month in Glendale. We are going to have a Philippine Heritage celebration at the Glendale Central Library, located at 222 East Harvard, this coming Saturday, October 28, from 5:30 p.m. We will showcase music and songs, folk dances, fashion show, and food sampling. This event is free and open to all. Again, we would like to extend our invitation to you, to city staff, and the whole community. We hope to see you there. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you all for being here. I do have a proclamation for you. I want to read the proclamation, and I will have Ms. Devine present it. Whereas the Filipino-American History Month, also known as the Filipino-American Heritage Month, is celebrated in the United States during the month of October. And whereas the Filipino-American National Historical Society established Filipino-American History Month in the year 1988 and is now celebrated nationwide. And whereas this History Month is also officially recognized by the California Department of Education, and in 2006, it marked the centennial celebration of Filipino migration to the United States. And whereas the Filipino-American Business Association of Glendale, how do you pronounce it? FABAG?
Yes.
FABAG. Together with Glendale Library Arts and Culture and the AL2 Foundation, will celebrate Philam Heritage Month on October 28, 2017 at Glendale Central Library with dance, songs, cultural presentation. And whereas the City of Glendale recognizes the increasing number of Filipinos who live and work in the city and join the celebration of Philam Heritage Month and congratulate FABAG for their ongoing arts and cultural awareness and expressions. And now, therefore, I, Vartan Garpetian, Mayor of the City of Glendale, do hereby proclaim the week of October 24th through October 31st, 2017 as Filipino-American Heritage Week in Glendale.
Thank you. And I just want to say that if anybody out there can make it, this is always a fantastic festival. Good food, music, a lot of fun. So I look forward to it.
And also the dancing.
Yes.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to see if Mr. Hernandez is in the dais tonight or not. He's in the chambers. Okay, next item, please.
Next item is the consent items. The following are routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Okay, Ms. Beers?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, if it would be okay with you, we'd like to pull item 4B. Item 4B, so that staff can give you a brief update on that item, and then we can move forward with the rest of the consent calendar.
All right, is there a motion to move rest of the calendar?
I'll move the balance of the consent calendar.
A second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Zagajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Okay, Ms. Beers?
Item 4B is Director of Public Works and Fire Chief regarding design and engineering services for renovations at fire stations 26, 28, and 29. B1 is a motion awarding and authorizing to execute a professional services agreement to PMSM Architects, Inc. for an amount not to exceed $124,000 plus a 10% contingency of $12,400 for a total not to exceed amount of $136,400.
Okay. Is
We're going to have Ribik Golanian, Director of Public Works, give you a brief update on this item before moving forward.
floor is all yours, Mr. Bologna.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members, City Council.
For a while, we have been planning to make some improvements and renovations at 3 of fire stations in the city, namely Fire Station 26 on North Brand, north of Glen Oaks Boulevard. The plan is to enlarge and modernize the existing kitchen area, as well as add one new office and a storage closet. At Fire Station 28, which is in La Crescenta on New York Avenue, we are planning, the scope of work is to add 5 new dorm rooms, 2 new unisex restrooms, and a small office. The unisex restrooms and the new dorm rooms are intended to accommodate both male and female firefighters, ambulance operators, and paramedics. At Fire Station 29 on Honolulu and Montrose, we are planning to create 10 dorm rooms and add 3 unisex restrooms. In February of 2016, we issued a request for qualifications and made a direct invitation to over 50 consulting, architectural, and engineering firms, and pre-qualified 21 of those, 23 to be exact. And subsequently, when this project came up, we released an RFP, issued an RFP, request for proposals, to 4 of these architectural engineering firms that have experience in similar sort of renovations. We received 3 proposals in response to the RFP, and in accordance with the California Government Code, we conducted a competitive evaluation process and selected PMSM as the most qualified company, primarily for their demonstrated competence and professional qualifications. It so happened that they also submitted the lowest fee proposals of the 3 firms, and we negotiated and finalized the scope and fee with PMSM. For your information, PMSM a couple of years ago completed the design documents and the specifications for the expansion of the Alex Theater project. The negotiated final fee is $124,000, and we are requesting your approval of that amount plus a 10% contingency for a project that will, engineers' estimate currently is at $1.1 million. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gulanian. Any questions from staff?
I have one. What's the number of female firefighters at this moment?
Currently, I believe there are 2 female firefighters and 2 ambulance operators.
That's correct.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions?
I just
Sargajani.
simply I raised this issue before. There are apparently 8 companies that they came forward.
We issued RFP, request for proposals, to 4 companies, and 3 submitted proposals in response to the RFP.
4 responded.
4 received RFPs, 3 responded.
Here it says this stuff. Okay. However, I mean, what bothers me, I mean, whether it's 3 or 4, is all of them are outside. Their offices are outside Glendale, and as if there is no architect or engineer in Glendale to participate. And that bothers me, actually. That's all.
I completely understand, Councilmember Agajanian. When we released the request for qualification, we advertised it in the news press, we advertised it on the city's website, on Public Works webpage, and we sent direct mailings to all of the companies that we know of that operate, are based in Glendale, and it appears like most of these companies are most geared towards residential developments and architectural firms that work with developers in the city currently. We have 2 on the pre-qualified list, 2 companies. One is Landscape Architect, and the other one is purely engineering firm that are based in Glendale. And when appropriate projects will come up, we'll definitely send an RFP directly to them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to...
I'll move the item.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes, next item, please.
Next item is City Council and staff comments.
comments? 35 minutes rule.
No, I haven't. No, 5-minute rule, 2-minute rule. First of all, I attended Congressman Adam Schiff's announcement of the introduction of the Rim of the Valley Corridor Act, which the Rim of the Valley extends from this Simi Hills to Santa Susana's to the Verdugos and on to the San Gabriels. This corridor will be added to the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. It will add 200,000 acres of open space to our parklands, and it will allow the national parks to protect our resource, which is that open space, and also for recreational planning and a lot more. So we have to, those of you that were out there fighting for this Rim of the Valley to be added to the parkland, keep fighting that fight so that Congressman Schiff can achieve his goal, because he's been working on this, I think, since 2008. So it's been a long, long haul. The other item I wanted to mention was that I believe it was last week Senator Portantino, state senator, was here talking about legislation. One of the bills he mentioned was Senate Bill 360, which was the wireless coverage bill. And he mentioned that it had passed regrettably. Well, I read today that it was vetoed by the governor, which is very good, because this bill would have eased restrictions and set uniform rates for what local governments can charge for installment and other equipment for wireless services. So it puts the control back to the municipality and out of the state government. So it was a good thing that the governor vetoed it. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Agajanian? Mr.
Sure. On Wednesday, I, along with most of my colleagues, attended the Glendale Fire Foundation's Awards Luncheon, which was very nice as always, giving out awards to some very remarkable men and women in our community, and it was very well attended. Also, on Friday night, I attended the opening of the Tufenkin Fine Arts Gallery, the ribbon cutting. So we have another art gallery that just opened up on Friday on Louis Street, right next to the ARC, right across the street from the ARC. So we have more art and art venues coming to our city as we speak. That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinanian. Mr. Agajanian? No comments? Okay. I'm going to be brief as well. I wasn't able to attend any of the events because I was out of the country for over 2 weeks, and it's great to be back. Let me start by that. We traveled to Armenia, had a small delegation of police and fire that we took to Armenia, made the connections, strengthened the connections, and from here on is up to the professionals to continue the relationship. Also traveled to Korea, met with sister cities and the mayors of our sister cities in Korea. It was a great experience for me. It's a different world out there on the other side of the Pacific. Also traveled to China for a short period of time to visit some of the factories of their rail manufacturers in China. Since our community event announcement is coming up next, I have one announcement to make. I would like to do that now, and then we go to the community to hear from them. We have the Glendale Gives Thanks Community Prayer Breakfast that is hosted by Glendale Religious Leaders Association. That will take place in November 9th at the Glendale Civic Auditorium. Doors will open at 7. Breakfast is at 7:30, and program will begin at 8 a.m. Tickets are $35 prior to October 31st and $40 at the door. So November 9th, starting at 7 a.m., Glendale Civic Auditorium. I encourage everyone to attend. It's a great community event. Brings a lot of community leaders and community members together. So, with that, what is next item, Mr.
Next section on the agenda is the community event announcement portion.
Okay, this is 3 minutes. First speaker is Dr. Amina Garpetian. It wasn't done by design. I'm going with the order of the cards
I was the first one
that
here.
was given to me. So,
Well, good evening, Mayor Garpetian and council members and staff. I'm just here to welcome the mayor. Welcome back. No, I'm just kidding. No, welcome back. No, I'm here on behalf of the 8th annual Glendale Health Festival Committee. And as you know, this is the 8th year that the Glendale Health Festival is being held in Glendale. And the motto for the Health Festival is bringing healthier community together. It has been a very, very successful event, very well attended, and it serves a lot of our community members. And the Health Festival will be held on Saturday, November 4th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Pacific Community Center at 501 South Pacific Avenue. If you've been to one of our health festivals, you see that it's an event organized, and it's a collaborative work between so many volunteers and organizations in our community involving all three of our hospitals and a lot of our other organizations. And you can see specialists, specialists from different health professions who are there to provide their expertise. And if anybody has any questions or they would like to get their opinion, the physician's opinion, they're there as volunteers. Just to mention some of the services provided on the day of the health festival, and I want to emphasize this: everything that I mentioned on this list, they will be free of charge. Free complete health evaluation, blood work. And this year, for the first time, we will have thousands of prescription recycled eyeglasses, eye screenings and eyeglass fittings for kids 5 years and up with prescription glasses, eye screenings for kids 6 months to 6 years to detect early eye diseases, dental exams and referrals to free or reduced cost dental clinics, referrals for pap smear, mammogram on the site, cancer screenings, medical consultations, mental health education and evaluation, hearing tests, medication consultation, and on-site drug disposal. So if you have extra old medications that they've been sitting in your homes, please do not dispose them. Just bring them to the site and we will take care of them. CPR training, immigration issues, presentations on parenting, immigration, and addictions from 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., free flu shots, free citizenship eligibility screenings, and free food and entertainment. There is a lot of things going on that day, so everybody, including every single community member, is invited. And for more information, please visit www.glendalehealthfestival.com or AAMS, Armenian American Medical Society of California.com for more information. I hope I will see all of you there. And as I said, the community is welcome to attend. It's a free event and open to public. Thank you so much.
thank you very much. Next speaker is Guillermo Garcia, followed by Donna Libra.
Good evening. My name is Guillermo Garcia. I'm a librarian at the Downtown Central Library. This is Christine Markoshin, children's librarian at the Pacific Park Library, and Jenny Quiñones, librarian at CISA. So we are here today to invite the community to
Who's this guy? Who's that guy?
Well, this is an alfeñique, and this represents Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead. So we're going to celebrate this holiday at the Pacific Park Library on November 1st, which is not tomorrow, but next Wednesday, from 5 to 7 p.m. And this is located at 501 South Pacific Avenue, Glendale, California, 91204.
This is going to be a free family event, and we're going to have skull decorating, free face painting. Everything provided is going to be free. We're also going to have bilingual story time, kite making, and more. We are organizing this event in partnership with the Glendale City Clerk, the Works LA, and the Glendale Latino Association.
Okay.
And I have a cold, so my one line is, see you there.
Nice.
And if that's okay, I'm going to do this in Spanish to invite the Hispanic community.
Of course.
Estamos invitando a la comunidad de habla hispana a que asistan a nuestra celebración de Día de Muertos el próximo miércoles 1 de noviembre de 5 a 7 de la noche en la Biblioteca Pacific Park. Este es un evento familiar gratuito. Habrá decoración de calaveras y de papalotes, lectura de cuentos bilingües, tatuajes temporales, pan de muerto y más. Estamos organizando este evento en conjunto con el secretario municipal de Glendale, de Works LA y la Asociación de Latinos de Glendale. Va a ser un evento muy divertido, los esperamos. Thank you very much. Have a nice
Muchas
day.
gracias. Thank you. Donna, followed by John Bagzilian.
Hi, good evening. Okay, this has nothing to do on the agenda. It's regarding the rent control. And as me being a landlord, I've had tenants for many, many years, and I just found out that there was a petition started on this. I was never notified. I just found out, too, by calling it was denied. So what my question really quick is, will there be a public hearing to acquaint landlords with the new ordinance if it passes and before if it goes into effect? Are we going to be, as landlords, the right to fight this? Who's going to be, who can we contact, or are the landlords? We were never even contacted. And I have another friend sitting, but...
Okay, go ahead and finish your comments.
So what
because we
I'm
don't
concerned
usually...
about is, are we, because there's off-site addresses for us landlords. I live somewhere else. Are we going to be contacted within that address? Because I know you can go to the title company and get a whole list of the whole Glendale and where all those off-site addresses are. The landlords are off-site, but some of them do keep their mailing address the same as where the tenants are. I don't know why, but all I'm considered at is I have great tenants. My rent is really low for Glendale. I don't believe in raising the rent and doing this. I have a great tenant. She's a teacher. She's been with me almost 8 years. And previous that I had a tenant for 10. So what I'm saying is, do you think that this is going to pass? Because I need to know. I mean, and if there's somebody petitioning, how long does it take in process before, if it goes in effect, how many months does that take? Because that I have to know kind of where I stand here.
Okay. We usually do not. Are you done with your comments, or
Yes.
you want to continue?
No, that's
Because you still okay.
Oh.
We usually don't respond to the speakers, one at a time. So if you like to have a seat, I will ask my city attorney to respond to you and let you know what is going on with the petition that was taking place and go from there.
Well, I heard it was denied, but they can actually do it again because something was not done correctly. So I just want to know what that process is so I can move forward with what I have to do.
Most importantly, maybe someone can comment on the fact that there were public hearings held on this.
Right, that's how I was going to.
Important part.
Not on the...
Well, not on rent control. Would you like me to respond at the end of all the speakers, or do you want me to respond right now?
If you're done with your comments, please have a seat. Respond right
Sure.
now so we won't.
So,
make them wait.
as has been referred to, Mr. Mayor, members of council, a petition to adopt a rent control initiative was submitted to the city at the beginning of October. That petition had several legal deficiencies, and for that reason, the city clerk was required to reject that petition. Any proponent of any initiative measure to amend our code or amend our charter can submit a petition through our process, and there's a process where they submit the petition. Our office gives it a title and summary, and then the proponents of that measure have 180 days to get the signatures. If at any time somebody submits a valid petition that meets all the legal requirements and then has the requisite number of signatures, then at that point what will happen in almost all circumstances is that the council will direct staff to prepare an analysis of that measure, bring that back to the council for its review of the measure, and then at that point the council is required to either place the measure on the ballot or frankly adopted outright. So there is a process before it goes on the ballot where we have a public meeting where the matter is heard. In addition, I think what Councilmember Sinani has referred to, we've had a number of meetings starting in 2006 on affordable housing issues and rent issues. There was no direction by council to direct us to prepare any sort of rent control ordinance, although we have been studying an ordinance that would require landlords to offer a one-year lease with an option, and that is still working its way through the process. We've had a number of committee meetings on that, and that will come back at some point next year, probably.
Just to clarify, when we have a public hearing for any of our meetings, we do not send a notice to every single person in the city, or if it's a public hearing regarding rent control or rent issue or what is the new ordinance called?
The right to lease.
Right to lease. Or then we do not send a notice to every tenant, or we do not send a notice to every landlord. It's published. And
we did do extensive public outreach on the right to lease ordinance. I would imagine if at any time an initiative measure for a rent control item or anything related to rent or a right to lease ever made it on the ballot, there would be, again, extensive public outreach related to that. Again, we can't mail notice to every single property owner, but we do have extensive outreach efforts.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, with the right to lease, the last hearing, a large number of property owners, landlords showed up, right? So a lot of landlords did receive notice about that one.
Yes.
Because what they do is they go to the stakeholders, which is the Glendale Association of Realtors, apartment owners of Greater LA. They were all notified, and then they send a notice to their members. So we're doing, and it's online. It's on our website. We're doing everything we can to, reach out to as many people as we can, but individually we don't send notices to every single landlord, and that's the way this is being conducted right now. Next speaker is John Boxlian.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable council members, and city officials, guests, ladies and gentlemen of the city of Glendale. My name is John Bagjan, and regarding rent stabilization petition submitted on October 2nd, 2017, we'd like to express our deepest disappointment. We'd like to bring to your attention the total numbers are 11,184, not 11,164 as mentioned. Per our written agreement to the previous process, the review process, we collected signatures. It was found any signatures entries, validity of which was questionable. You were requested to reference the folder number, a specific line number within the folder. Instead, you did not follow the written agreement and vaguely stated the total number of questionable signatures entries. We request that you follow the agreed upon terms and inform us on signature entries that were invalid. Once you have generated list of invalid signatures, list we one by one folder and line numbers. We would come together to verify your findings in order to present the truth to the voters of City of Glendale. In your letter stated that according to California Election Code section 9209, each section should have attached thereto to declaration of the person selecting the signatures. We would like to emphasize that the code refers to each section, not to each page. Each folder was presented as one section, and declaration of the person soliciting the signatures was provided at the end of each section. We're told that the petition would be forwarded to LA County Registrar Recorder's Office located in Norwalk, since they are the authority designated to review the validity of the signatures. Instead, the signatures were reviewed internally and forwarded process was omitted. This directly contradicts the information provided to us and shows procedural misconduct. Why was the petition reviewed by your staff if it was supposed to be sent to Norwalk to be reviewed by the state officials. We would like to mention that each of the city council members was elected by collecting maximum of 7,000 voters. The number of signatures collected, 11,185. I request a few more minutes.
How many minutes do you need?
2. It is very important. The number of signatures collected, 11,184, greatly exceeds the maximum number of voters needed for council members to take office. Therefore, there is a higher standard for rent stabilization to be implemented in the city of Glendale. Last 2 weeks, we will be meeting distinguished state officials, Anthony Portantino and Laura Friedman, to express our concern about our petition. We have been advised to work with Glendale City Council members. All the officials and people like us were amazed that we could collect 11,184 signatures. It was a miracle by itself. We ask you to take into consideration the request of 11,184 votes. This matter can be solved without having to go on the ballot for people to vote, for they have already voiced the need to have rent stabilization in the city of Glendale. As a member of local clergy, and by the name of God, I commend you to find the request right to the right solution. This is still United States of America, not Russia, China, or North Korea, whom we criticize the most. Our great country has moral, ethical laws that should not be violated, which would create disaster and despair for lots of people. So help us God. Thank you.
Thank you. If you like, leave your information with the city clerk's office. They will contact you and give you all the answers that you need regarding your concerns and questions. Next speaker is, I'm going to try this. Jedije Debrias. Yedige? Is it Y or J?
It's a J.
Okay.
But I'm giving my time to Mike, which is much easier to pronounce.
Unless he has a card, he can help him out.
Yes, Yedidia has traded cards with me, so try not to be too confused. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike Van Gorder. I'm the captain of the Glendale Tenants Union. I rise to represent our 80 members and the 2/3 of the city that are renters, young people, immigrants.
Excuse me, before, stop his sound real quick, but after you're done, please fill out the speaker's card.
Oh, yeah, I already filled one out.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
There's a clock. Okay. 2/3 of our city are renters, young people, immigrants, families, seniors, all generally not rich. But the city's becoming increasingly suited either for new wealthy residents or for homeowners who are wise and lucky enough to have purchased a home before the market exploded. In 2000, the average home in Glendale cost $325,000. Now it's beyond $770,000. Access to home ownership in the middle class has evaporated for anyone of modest means. In the space of a single year, the average rent in Glendale went up almost 10% to $2,215. Property flippers and corporate landlords are scooping up properties, neglecting safety and health improvements, raising rents, digging up the roots of our community to enrich themselves. People who have lived in the same units for decades are being economically evicted with impossible monthly rent increases of $300, $500, $750, or sometimes more. Now, I'm inspired to hear that some landlords choose not to increase their rents. But there are thousands of Glendale residents and former Glendale residents who have lost homes because they were not so lucky. We need more housing stock, but what's actually being built? Prestigious new luxury apartments with skincare product names like Brio or Onyx or Altana. They're very attractive to wealthy folks who want access to downtown LA and to the Valley. And they start at $1,900 for a 400 square foot studio. No working class folks would choose a burden like that, but these units aren't built to address our needs. Now, as previously addressed, the Glendale City Council just received a petition with 11,000 resident signatures demanding rent control. And while the state rejected it on a technicality, we behind the petition are preparing another stronger one with legal aid right now. We will not stop, and we cannot stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Karen Samsky. Followed by Dan Przybilski. Go ahead.
Good evening to everyone on the council. I'm one of those lucky people that bought in 2000. If I had to rent today, I couldn't afford to live in Glendale. I'm watching friends and people I love, my friends are people I love, have to move. Their buildings are being sold. The landlords that were once fair are not who own a lot of these buildings now. That's why I'm part of the Glendale Tenants Union. When renters are negatively impacted by private and public decisions, we are all negatively impacted. What's happening with our skyrocketing rents is affecting thousands of people in dangerous ways. So you have to ask yourself, are landlords making decisions about profits that are also good for the rest of us? Or are they making decisions about profits that are only good for them and detrimental for the rest of us as a whole? Past City Council decisions have had a role in this rent crisis, and it must now decide who and what it stands for. Grounded in the values of partnership, Glendale has been at the forefront of other human rights issues that make me proud to live here. Affordable housing is a human rights issue. Affordable housing is the foundation for strong, self-sustaining families and a healthy economy. Glendale must lead by example and set a standard, putting the common welfare of all contributing residents of Glendale above unreasonable profits. I'm a regular voter, and a city council candidate must support rent control to earn my vote. And another disabled Glendale Tenants Union member asked me to read this short statement. I've lived in Glendale for 30 years and raised my daughter here. She also thinks of Glendale as her home and wants to raise her children here as well. I'm a senior disabled citizen. I live independently because there is insufficient affordable housing. I have a small single for which I pay full rent. Both my daughter and I have seen our rents raised twice in 2 years, hers by $300. I don't know how these management companies think the average person is supposed to continue to meet these increased demands. The fact that the City Council could approve all the high-end structures built is the key. Since their rents are so expensive, many property management companies have gotten on the let's make a killing on this too bandwagon. The hardships created by this unbridled greed needs to be laid at the doorstep of the council. The monster created has taken its toll on so many of your constituency. I don't see how you can do anything less than righting this egregious wrong by giving the citizens an opportunity to vote for this. I pray you will. I, too, am a regular voter, and a city council candidate must support rent control to earn my vote. Thank you. Her name is Joanna.
Next speaker is Dan. Bilski.
You got it right. Welcome back, Mr. Mayor. Members of council. I'm a homeowner in Glendale. I bought the home a number of years ago, and we did quite a bit of research prior to buying the home. And a main reason we decided on Glendale is it's one of the top safest cities in America for its size. That's on a number of different websites, and I want to thank you for achieving that, actually, because your governorship made that happen. My concern is that pot shops coming into Glendale. I also work in Glendale at Sterling Management Systems. We get practice owners from all over the country to come in, and we help them with their practice. We're quite successful. We've been here for 30 years. These practice members have told me that, especially ones in Denver or Portland, getting pot shops in the area has definitely changed the whole dynamic of their city. More homeless people came in, more people on the streets kind of doped up, etc. I'm concerned because I'd like to keep Glendale the safest city. Let's not change anything. Let's keep it, whatever you're doing right. I'd like to keep that going. I get very concerned about it after hearing from so many different practice owners that they're moving out of the city. They're having to sell their building or move out because the dynamic has changed and it's not safe anymore. I'd like to keep Glendale safe. Thank you.
Thank you. That was my last speaker card. What's next on the agenda, please?
Next is adoption of ordinance. 7A is an ordinance amending sections 30.36.010 and 30.36.030 through 30.36.110, adding section 30.36.125, amending sections 30.36130 through 30.36.140, adding section 30.36145 and amending section 30.36.160 of the Glendale Municipal Code 1995 relating to density bonus incentives, introduced by Councilmember Agajanian on October 10, 2017. Should be noted as well that this ordinance had some amendments that you should have been made aware of.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, on the dais is a revised ordinance. They are only non-substantive typographical changes, no edits otherwise whatsoever. So I'm asking you to make the motion on that ordinance.
Okay. And this item was before you, Mr. Mayor, 2 weeks ago, and staff presented the information as it pertains to about 6 bills that needed to be placed within our ordinance to update our ordinance. And this evening, we are here for the adoption, and staff is here to answer any questions you may have. Phil Lanzafame and staff are here.
Any questions from staff?
I do. I have one question. If I can
Line.
have Laura or Phil. I just want to make it clear to the residents that this is a density bonus ordinance, and I know there's some fear out there when they hear that. I just want to make sure that we're not granting any new incentives other than those required by the state.
That's correct. You are adopting, basically the ordinance that we've prepared reflects state law. There's only one item that we did add that would be in addition to state law. State law does not have a cap on the amount of density bonus that can be granted. And so we are proposing that anything that's above a 35% density bonus be brought at a public hearing before you prior to consideration.
So neither are we omitting or taking out of our ordinance any public hearings or outreach to the community. It's all staying in the ordinance.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one speaker card. Mr. Ovanesian, Rubik Ovanesian.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, honorable members of council, staff. I'm here to speak on the density bonus ordinance. We're in support of it, and as long as it's consistent with the State of California Senate Bill 1818, where it is the density bonus, we recommend it as the broker to a lot of our developer clients. And just a point of clarification, as long as it addresses height and FAR, total square footage permitted. Otherwise, we're in support of it. Thank you.
Sorry, when you say we're in support of it, are you talking about yourself?
A lot of developers that we worked with in locally and other areas. Okay. We've discussed it with them that the density bonus. A lot of the developers comply with the Senate Bill 1818 and exercise that to add the density and in return provide the lower income housing.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. So, is there a motion to Mr.
Please move the motion.
Second.
Roll call.
Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Ghazarian?
Mayor who?
Ghazarian. New mayor.
What was that?
New council member.
You mean Mayor?
On this item?
You want? We can't take, yes, not a Ghazarian, Garpetian, but yes. I can't, because we already took the vote on this issue. 8C, this is 8C, okay, it's not the same item. Next item, please.
Under action items, 8A is Director of Public Works regarding Chevy Chase Sewer Diversion Project. 8A1 is a motion to increase the contract amount of the professional services agreement with McMillan Jacobs Associates, contract number C106021, in the amount of $200,000 for a total not to exceed amount of $999,100 for construction inspection services, and authorizing the city manager to sign the contract amendment.
Okay, I'm going to Mr. Gulanian.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, member City Council, As you may recall, the Chevy Chase Sewer Diversion Project involves the construction of approximately 4,300 linear feet of sewer main pipelines that is intended to divert, when it's completed, to divert sewer flows from LA Hyperion Treatment Plant to Lagwerp, which ultimately will save the city almost $1 million in conveyance and treatment fees that we pay to the city of LA. Back in October of 2015, we entered into a construction contract with Mladen Buntinch Construction Company for the construction of this project. At the same time, we entered into a professional services agreement with McMillan Jacobs Associates to provide construction inspection services during the course of this project. Early on, the early stages of the construction, during the tunneling operation, the contractor encountered some cobbles and large rocks that complicated the project, not only increased the contract amount, but it also extended the contract period, which necessitated keeping McMillan Jacobs Associates on board for a longer period of time than we had initially anticipated. That said, we are requesting an additional $200,000 in fees for construction inspection services to see us through the end of construction, as well as closing out documents and reports that are necessary to finalize this project. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Move it.
Second.
There are no questions. Yes. Roll call, please.
Sorry, who moved it before?
Mr. Agajanian moved
Thank
it.
you.
And
Mr. Najarian seconded. Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
8B is Director of Public Works regarding parts and repair services for city-owned Elgin Street sweepers and Vector sewer and storm drain cleaning vehicles. B1 is resolution dispensing with competitive bidding and authorizing the execution of a 5-year purchase order contract with Hawker Equipment Company for the provision of parts and repair services for a total not to exceed contract amount of $400,000.
Okay. Mr. Golanian?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Member City Council, we own and operate a total of 6 street sweepers, of which 3 are manufactured by Elgin. We also own and operate 5 sewer and storm drain cleaning devices, vehicles that are manufactured by Vector. Back in 2012, we entered into a 5-year contract with Hawker Equipment Company. At the time, they were the only factory authorized dealership in Southern California that could provide service and parts for these equipment. That contract was for $500,000, $100,000 each year, and it's almost expired now. So we are requesting. It so happens they're still the only factory authorized dealership in Southern California, requesting to enter into a contract for another 5-year term, this time for $400,000. That's $80,000 a year, and that's based on our historical repair schedules and cost and usage. And we are planning to retire 2 of these street sweepers in the next couple of years or so the cost has come down. We are requesting your authorization to dispense with competitive bidding and enter into a contract with Hawker Equipment Company for these services. Again, I'll be happy to answer any questions, ma'am.
Councilman Alejandro.
My concern is that a while ago we discussed that there will be 3 zones and private haulers will do the sweeping the streets. So what will happen with this contract at that time?
Mr. Mayor, Member of City Council,
of course,
Councilman.
In case if we go along with the project.
Yes, Councilman Agajanian, you are correct. We included street sweeping operation as part of the proposed commercial franchise program. And if and when it materializes and we accept the proposal that is suitable, at least financially, we will just cancel this contract and we will have paid the contractor whatever services we use up to that time.
So
we don't owe them the entire amount.
We're not obligated to stay with the contract entire period.
Exactly.
Okay.
Is there a motion to?
Yes, I move. Second.
Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian?
Yes.
Devine?
Yes.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
8C is General Manager of Glendale Water and Power regarding proposed 21-year Western System Power Pool WSPP Power Purchase Agreement, PPA, with Skylar Resources LP Skylar for the purchase of renewable and carbon-free energy to replace an existing 21-year WSPP PPA. C1 is a resolution terminating the existing 21-year PPA with Skylar for renewable energy dispensing with competitive bidding and authorizing a replacement for an amount not to exceed $647 million over a 21-year term, authorizing the novation of a PPA to credit-worthy counterparty without further City Council action, and finding that this project is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA.
Mr. Zern?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, in 2014, the City Council approved a 25-year agreement with Skylar for the delivery of energy to us, of which 50% would be renewable, and that's 50 megawatt hours every hour for 16 hours a day. Shortly after the approval of the contract, they approached us and asked if we would be interested in reopening the contract to allow them to bifurcate it and bring in a partner. They wanted to bring in Morgan Stanley as a 5-year partner to this agreement. We agreed to that at that time, and that partnership will end in 2019. They again approached us to ask us if we would be interested in novating the agreement for 2 reasons. One, to bring on other creditworthy partners. When I say creditworthy, that's our creditworthy criteria established by this City Council. And the second was to have the ability to deliver the energy at all of the locations which feed our transmission. So we have 3 delivery points that feed our two transmission lines. Previous agreement only allowed them to deliver at 1 point, which was Meade. This is beneficial for us because it allows a greater variety of potential renewable power. In return for us novating the agreement, they have agreed to increase the amount of renewable from 50 to 55%. And when I say renewable, that is the RPS, California Energy Commission standard for renewable energy. And they've also added a 20% carbon-free energy stipulation. So 75% of the contract will be either renewable or carbon-free. And all other aspects of the agreement remain the same. Price, cost, everything else, term remains the same. It's just simply allowing them to expand the delivery points and to bring on other creditworthy partners, and we in turn get additional renewable energy and additional carbon-free energy. One other aspect to this, the third thing, was that we are asking in here that if there are further novations to the agreement, and it is only in response or only in relation to the creditworthiness of another partner, that the city manager be allowed to enter into that agreement, all other things being equal. If anything else in the contract were to change, we'd bring it back to council, simply if they wanted to novate to another creditworthy partner. And again, that creditworthiness is established by this council. So that's the third item that's included for your consideration and approval. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Maybe a question. The $30 million that you're saying that the value comes to the city. Can you explain that?
Sure. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Devine. What we did is we took the additional renewable energy and the carbon-free energy that we are getting from this revised agreement, and we priced it based on market costs today for renewable energy credits and the carbon costs that are associated with that. Those are factors that can be, or those are aspects of the cost of energy that can be monetized and traded, and we actually do that. And so if you take it and extrapolate it based on what we are getting in addition, it came out to $30 million based on today's market price.
Okay. And actually, let's see, this broadens our variety of renewables that are possible in
Correct.
the future, and it also gives Skylar Morgan Stanley or whoever their partner is at the time, more capability to get for us to get renewables from them.
Correct. And primarily, I think it's the knob, it's the Nevada-Oregon border, and that opens up the Pacific Northwest for renewable energy there. Previously, their delivery point was Meade, which is essentially the desert regions of Arizona and Nevada. So
And this would be hydro, geothermal.
It could be small hydro by definition of the CEC. It could be geothermal. It could be solar. It could be wind.
Thank you.
Councilman Alexander.
I have two concerns. I guess I raised it with our director of Glendale Water and Power. First, we have a contract. This is not for today, of course, for 25 years. I'm very concerned because this is an industry. Generating electricity is recently it goes up and down, and the technology is changing so rapidly. And to get stuck with a contract for 25 years, in my opinion, is not a good idea. That's, of course, my opinion. Because as you see recently, the solar, the windmill, and others, 25 years ago, nobody would think of. I mean, today is a major source of energy, the solar, the windmill, and others. And rules are changing so fast also. Imagine even state of California. They changed the rules so fast that it should be renewable energy, which we would not think 25 years ago. So to get stuck with 25 years contract, it bothers me. That's, of course, this has been signed before, and that's my concern, of course. The second thing, on page 3, item number 3, it says the city manager or his designee to be authorized to novate of this contract in the future upon Skylar's request and without further city council authorization. And of course it continues, of course, provided that the new counterparty must have a credit rating equal to better than BAA1 Moody's BBB plus standard or equivalent. I mean, I just wanted to I want to see that City Council will be notified that we are doing
extending the contract.
Yeah, I mean, at least to be notified. Just not to ignore the City Council, although the contract is signed and we are replacing one company with another company, but still I think City Council should know that the Glendale Water and Power is doing it.
Okay. And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Agajanian, and I'm not trying to change your mind because I know you are concerned, but I will tell you that when you're talking about utility scale renewable development, you have to be able to provide a project that produces hundreds and hundreds of megawatt hours every hour to the utilities. Now, in our portfolio right now, if you looked at our carbon-free and our renewable contracts, they range from 16 to 53 years. So they traditionally take on a longer term because the contracts, they amortize the cost of the development over a certain period of time to try to keep the energy costs low, while at the same time covering the cost of such a great project. I mean, you look at a 250 megawatt solar project, for instance, that's 2 square miles, if you can imagine, of solar panels and all that goes with it. So today, now under SB 350, the minimum you can have is a 10-year agreement because they want long-term agreements for you to establish it. And I know 10 years isn't 20 years, and that would make you probably a little more comfortable. But all I can tell you is that being a member of the Southern California Public Power Authority and seeing as a joint action agency our ability to enter into these agreements, and these are all of the publicly owned utilities in Southern California, including LADWP, which is the largest public utility in the United States, they are entering into these long-term agreements. We're able to piggyback, if you will, and take small percentages of really big projects because of the advantage of having the Anaheims, the Riversides, the LADWPs, Pasadena and Burbank as well, who are entering into these projects. But at this point in time, That is generally where you're seeing the projects go, is in that 20 to 30 year period. Believe me, Mr. Agajanian, if I can find them with shorter terms, I'll be all over that, with the objective of trying to keep the cost as low as I can, because ultimately it's the ratepayer that has to pick that up. So I understand your concern. You do make a point, because you entered an agreement. We entered an agreement 10 years ago. I can't believe that some of these types of energy are more expensive or equally today. Now, of course, it also includes transmission costs. It includes firming and shaping of intermittent energy and delivery, which is also added costs. But at this point in time, what we're seeing available to us, and it's why we've been pretty picky about which projects we go into. They have been for those longer terms, but we will certainly look for projects that we can take advantage of that have shorter terms, so that we don't get ourselves in a long-term predicament where we can and when we can. And then on the final note, it's simply what our objective there was. Nothing in the contract would change. Not the term, not the price, not one iota, except it would be the company asking us, could they novate to another firm? So instead of Morgan Stanley, maybe they said they wanted to novate to Wells Fargo. And Wells Fargo meets our credit criteria, and so the city manager wouldn't say yes on that. If anything else in that contract changed, anything, we would be back to council. There's no question. I mean, we absolutely would be back. But again, that number 3, that third item there, is a comfort level item. So to the extent that you're not comfortable with that, we can take that out. I mean, that's just something that it's the Schuyler deal isn't going to rise or fall on that particular item. That's more for us internally.
Got it. I have one speaker. I'd like to go to the speaker first, and we can deliberate more. Dan Brotman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, staff, Mr. Zern. I just read about this last night, so I'm going to a few thoughts that I'm going to throw out there. One is that it does seem odd to me, and it makes me somewhat uncomfortable, that a contract that's valued at $647 million, I think it is, over 21 years, which is it's over $30 million a year, would be awarded without any competitive process. I know there's an existing contract and we're just changing it, but in particular, I understand someone just emailed this to me. There was a Rich Gazarian who used to work for Glendale Water and Power as an energy trader, and now he's the VP of Structured Transactions at Skylar. I mean, I'm not alleging anything. It was probably just a normal job transfer, but it does raise some eyebrows. And when you're saying, hey, we're not going to take a contract that's, valued at over $30 million a year to any kind of competitive process, I don't know, it just struck me as a little bit weird. So I'm just sharing that. Now more kind of a substantive thing, which is, I'm assuming, I don't know if it's true, I'm assuming this is some kind of an option agreement, that we're not committed to the purchase of the power, but we can, I don't know. But I understand the logic seems great. I mean, we give them, more flexibility to where they deliver the power to the grid, and they are upping the renewable and zero carbon percentage from 50 to 75. On the face of it, that's something that should make me very happy. I'm wondering, though, if they can go to 75, I mean, can they go to 85 or 100? Is that just a cost thing? Have we actually asked what the incremental cost would be, if there is an incremental cost to getting it to 100? That's just a question, because we have these transmission lines. If we could maximize the renewable power coming down them, that's good, right? So that's just a question. My last question is that $30 million in savings you say is based on assumptions of one of the things was the cost of carbon, and I would like to know what cost of carbon price you're using to derive that $30 million. That's something I would like, some information I would like to have. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Zern, would you like to respond to some of the...
It's interesting, Mr. Brotman beats us about the head and shoulders about pursuing renewable energy, and then I guess I'm not doing it the right way. But the bottom line here is, this is a contract Schuyler's up. So to ask them for more, this is not an option contract. They deliver the energy, we pay for it as agreed. we don't competitive bid these contracts. We negotiate them, and then we bring them to council, and we go through the vetting process that way. If council doesn't like the agreement, then they say no, and we move on. That vetting process for us, almost 99% of the time, takes place through SCAPA and the multi-agency agreements. So those are where the companies are vetted before they ever get there. They check their credit, they check their history, and SCAPA does that. And as a paying member of that organization, that's a benefit we get from it. So this is the energy that we will be getting. You can't just willy-nilly turn around and say, "Oh, I'd like to have 85 or 95 or 100%." This is this agreement. When we go out to fulfill our obligation under the state mandates, we'll look for other agreements and sign those as well. As far as the carbon price, we use today's figures that are in place. And that wasn't a savings. Mr. Brotman called it a savings. I didn't call it a savings. I simply said to try to give you an idea of what the additional renewable and carbon-free would be worth in a value. It's estimated about $30 million based on those two factors: the carbon price and the REC, the renewable energy credit that you would get with the extra 5%.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
One question, either to City Attorney or Mr. Zern. So this thing about former employee working, is there anything wrong with that? Anything?
Well, he again, that was years ago, and at this point in time, he's not involved in the decision with respect to the city.
So there's nothing legally wrong with that status.
And Councilmember Sinanian, that happened to occur right at just the contract had just been in place when I got here. And I can tell you that he was not the key factor driving that contract. That was negotiated hard by Mr. Peters and Mr. Linz. And Rich was an analyst who looked at, he would roll he would do the math, so to speak. But at the end of the day, when you're negotiating the contract and going through the coordination with SCAPA and the vetting process, that was done by Mr. Linz, who's no longer with us, and Mr. Peters, who also retired. But two very, very capable individuals who did that contract.
Okay.
I'll move the item. I have a couple of quick questions.
I had a follow-up question as well, if I may. So this authorization issue, obviously, as a council member, I wonder why are they asking for? They don't want to deal with the council. Is that what's
No,
going on?
sir. Mr. Mayor Garpetti, Mr. Councilmember Sinanian, that was us. They didn't ask for that. We put that in there just figuring that it might be a way to expedite it, not bring these to council each time if it was as simple as changing partners, as long as they met the criteria that you've already established. But again, it's not a deal breaker. It's the first two issues about the delivery point and being able to bring on another credit-worthy partner. That's the important part. We added that third one as a way that would make it a little bit easier for us if they decided to do this again in the future, all things being equal. But again, if that's something you're not comfortable with, let's remove it, and that won't affect the contract.
It's an important contract. The amount at issue is quite large.
Yes.
And for that reason, I think, I personally feel, I would feel more comfortable if we did retain that authority, and especially since this is not really something that they're conditioning the deal on, then it shouldn't be an issue for any of us.
Yeah, that's certainly absolutely in your right and purview. So I would say in order to make this deal good and ease your concerns, let's take it out.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Any more?
Go ahead.
No, I just want to move it, but on a condition that this council will be notified that at least they are replacing the companies.
Yeah. Before we take a vote, I have a couple of questions and maybe a comment. So just going back to this contract, it was done 10 years ago.
In 2014 is when we first did it.
2014.
2014 is when it was first signed.
Okay, so it was signed in 2014. Okay, is the Skylar the company that we offered them a huge parcel of land to build solar panels and generate renewable energy in Glendale, so it would be easier to the transmission lines and everything else, it would be easier to connect it to the grid, and they looked at it and they walked away from it?
Right, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Skylar actually approached us and asked us if we would be interested in potential development of a large utility-scale solar project in Glendale. We said we'd certainly be interested, but we didn't think we had available land. They said, if you would enter into this E&A, we'll look at it for you and give you a better idea, but we want to be able to protect our interest. They looked at it, including the landfill, the top of reservoirs, Brand Park, all of those facilities, and there just wasn't enough land from their standpoint as a utility-scale developer to build in Glendale, so they took a pass.
See, we tried that avenue as well. That's what I'm
Correct.
trying to get.
Yes, absolutely. You're absolutely right,
And
Mr. Mayor.
right now, 50% of our portfolio is renewable?
No, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Right now, with this project, we expect to meet the 2020 requirement of 33%, and then we are moving forward to the current SB 350 50% by 2030. So we have some work. We still have some work ahead of us to do.
So that 35%, can you tell me what the cost of that 35% is?
Today, if you looked at our renewable and carbon-free contracts, and again, they range from 16 to 25 years, and you cost out the annual amounts, and then extrapolate that to the term of the contract. Today, the value is of $1,000,000,000, 33 million. $1,033 million at the end of all of the terms of the contract.
Okay. Just want to put that out there, so everything we do, it costs to do business. It's not just a simple way of just saying it. So $1,033 million.
Correct, and those are the long-term contracts we have, so that wouldn't include the market purchases that we do each year.
Okay, so there is a motion by...
If I may, Mr. Mayor, members of council, just to briefly talking with my staff on this third point, apparently was a subject of negotiation, just because these deals, they come very quickly into place to do the novation. The last one that we did with Morgan Stanley came to very, very, very quickly. I can't remember if it came to council or not, but it is something that actually that Skylar is asking for. And again, we can, if it's a matter of notification, as we're processing the deal, we can certainly notify the council. But that time it takes to get the deal points and ready and come to council, that's what both, I guess, our staff and Skylar agreed to put that in there as a negotiation point. So I guess at this point, we're asking for that to be included as part of the approval.
Why the company should ask the city to notify the city council?
Again,
what kind of agreement is that?
Again, well, remember, these deals happen where there's energies on the market. Let me have Christine answer the question. But essentially, my understanding is sometimes these deals have to happen very quickly, and that's the reason.
Mr. Mayor, can I inject something here? Because quite frankly, from where I'm sitting, if we want to take it out, we'll take it out. And if that ends up being a deal breaker, because that wasn't my understanding, then we'll come back to council after that. Because it absolutely, to me, isn't something, if it's a concern of the council, and yeah, sometimes these things come quick, but I think we can expedite it as quick as possible and make sure that the council has a decision. I don't mean to overstep you,
No.
Mr. Garcia, but
I want to make sure we're clear from
I'm not going to
Christine.
make that a deal breaker, and it seems like there's enough concern on council to do that. Okay. We'll go back to Skylar then, and if we have to come back again, we will.
And the only thing I would add too is that when we come to council with the novation, it is the exact same deal. The only thing that's changing is the party, and staff at that level is determining that they're creditworthy. But again, if that's a deal breaker, we will push back.
Okay. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I may just shed some light on the discussions that we had with Skylar. I think the concern was, as Mr. Garcia mentioned, the amount of time that it would take potentially to get the city council approval, although that's certainly something that can be overcome by staff. The other thought that we had and that we entered into discussions with them over was the level of creditworthiness that they would have to have. It would have to be 2 notches above investment grade, and this is something that we discussed and approved with the Director of Finance. Additionally, the WSPP agreement to which this PPA would form part already has a provision that provides for assignment as long as the party provides reasonable creditworthiness assurances. So it's no different than any other deal that we would typically do, but as Mr. Zern said, that's something that we can go back to Skylar with.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I certainly would not change anything with regards to the credit ratings and the credit worthiness. Simply the fact of bringing it back to you, and it'll be incumbent upon staff to expedite it so that it happens quicker if that's your desire.
So it's built into their contract that they have the option to change their investors.
Yes. But this will do that.
But there are certain
but it's
parameters.
a matter of bringing it back to you to tell you when they do that change.
Right. So they have to notify us and get our approval when they want to change their basically partners, investors, and then we have to approve their creditworthiness. That's what it is.
Their creditworthiness will already have been pre-approved for you. It's just a matter of their changing, and you get to be notified of that through a formal process.
And absolutely no piece of the contract, again, that's before you this evening would be changed, except for novating to another company. That would be the only piece. And so, again, like Mr. Zern said, and we don't want to repeat this a number of times, if the comfort is not there on the council, we will take that piece out, and GWP staff will go back and negotiate. But if not, we would ask for you to approve the motions before you as stated. That would be my recommendation, and we could move forward. Again, no piece of the agreement would be changed. If anything were to be changed, it would come before the City Council, as we do with any other contract in the City of Glendale that is approved by the City Council.
Let me go to Mr. Najarian because he hasn't made any comments on this issue. And come back to you, Mr.
So I was briefed today. I don't know if you guys were, and the way I understand it is that the possible novation, which is legal terms of recreating a contract, recreating the contract, or amending the contract, would be to substitute one financial partner for another. The financial partner isn't the one giving us the electricity. In fact, we never are going to fall into debt with Skylar, or they're never going to fall into debt with us. All the purchases are made on a per transmission basis.
That's correct. The energy has to be delivered, and then we pay for it if it's not
So
delivered.
we're never going to be out of it. We're never be paying for the electricity, and then something happened, and we say, oh no, who's going to pay us back? So this is a total minor part of this contract. You guys want to have it come back and do all that, fine, but I think we're sending staff back to the renegotiation table unnecessarily. It's just the ability for them to bring in another financial partner with restrictions as to their strength. But whatever you guys want to do.
And they have to have the same standard, the same credit rating
whatever you
as
guys want to
the
do. It's
original.
not that big.
How big is Skylar?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Agajanian, big as in?
I mean, dollar-wise, business-wise.
I do not know offhand.
Are they in billions of dollars?
I couldn't say for sure. I do not know that.
When I read this, the number 3, now I'm more worried, actually. When I was reading, it was not that important to me. I just was curious that why they say that without request and without further City Council authorization. This reminds me of Enron. Enron was going around and doing businesses, and eventually we saw what happened.
No, don't go that far.
This is not, Mr. Agajanian, this wouldn't be even close to that.
But I'm saying I can't imagine a big company says, go ahead and do this. It's part of our contract that you are not going to say, or without further authorization for City Council. I can't imagine why they have to say, a big company, to get involved with these minor issues.
And Mr. Agajanian, I don't think they were trying to circumvent anything. I think they were looking at a way to try to expedite some of their deals, and being that they would not deviate any other aspect from any other aspect of the agreement, but simply novate to another creditworthy partner, and we set the creditworthiness. They asked for that. So
Mr. Mayor, can we sort of let's go back to the gist of this contract. What is it that this contracting entity does for the city of Glendale? They procure renewable energy for us
and have it delivered to
us, and thereby helping us satisfy our renewables requirements under state law.
Our daily load and our renewable requirements. Yes.
The requirements or prerequisites for an entity to be able to do this competently, I understand the creditworthiness. obviously, if they're doing large transactions. I mean, this contract alone is $647 million worth. So I assume there's a lot of money changing hands. What other elements? I mean, do they understand the energy world? Do they understand buying and selling energy? And this small group of is the universe of entities that can do this is finite, right? It's not huge.
It's not huge.
Okay.
It's not huge, but there are several firms that do this.
Several.
Yes. I mean, all the way up to your Shells and your Chevrons and
right. So it's like a small club of people that
I'd say yes.
Entities that do this, right?
Right.
So they would be selling this contract. We call it novation, but I assume it's a sale, right? They're gaining something by it.
Through their partnership with whoever they're novating or who they're bringing in as a partner. That's a benefit to them, obviously. Right. Which then that's why we then.
For us, it's a novation, but for them, it's a sale, right?
And then we turn around and gain something back through the novation, which was the additional energy. But they are an energy broker.
So what is it that we gain from the novation?
We get 5% more renewable energy and 20%
every time this
carbon.
Changes hands,
we get something.
We get something.
Correct.
What is that something? Is it
the last time we got the 2 megawatt battery facility? So when they wanted to novate before, we asked them for dollars, and that dollars ended up being a negotiation that we got a 2 megawatt battery facility. So the city of Glendale did not pay for that battery facility, but we are full owners of it.
Okay. And in order for this novation to go through in a timely manner, I guess staff is asking for council not to get involved because it takes too long. Is that right?
From this point on,
I'm speaking plainly.
I appreciate that, okay. Mr. Sinanian. They had brought it up, and staff, as Ms. Godinez indicated, had discussed it as well, is that to expedite for future novations that don't do anything other than change their partnership, and that as long as that partner meets the credit worthiness standards that we set, that then it could be the city manager signing it. Any other change in the contract comes back to council.
So in worst case scenario, could it be a credit worthy company, entity, that has the prerequisite rating? What is it? Triple B minus?
Triple B.
Yeah, triple B. But they don't. They're newbies to this world, and energy trading. Could that happen?
Well,
that's
Councilmember Sinanian. My sense is that partner is going to be a huge financial entity
that does everything,
like Wells Fargo, like Morgan Stanley, who have their hand in everything, and they either own power companies, or they have access to power companies, or they broker for power companies. So my sense is that's the caliber of folks you're going to see brought into this. It's possible you could see the Chevrons and Shells as well, but my sense is you're going to see the Wells Fargos, the Bank of Americas, and like Morgan Stanley.
Goldman Sachs,
the brokerage houses, you're going to see.
Morgan Stanley.
It's financial assistance is what their partnership is about.
So does this contract have a specific provision where it says that any novation is subject to City of Glendale's getting? I mean, how is it worded?
I'd have to see exact wording.
The part where it says we get something when they novate, when every time they want to change hands.
I don't think it says that in the agreement.
What does it say?
We bring it up when they want to novate. We bring it up.
But that means that you have leverage, right? You can tell them no.
Right.
So what does it say?
The contract says that if they meet the creditworthy requirements that we set, that we agree to the novation, and that would be true whether it's under this confirmation agreement or under the WSPP agreement. They have to provide us with reasonable creditworthiness assurances.
But that doesn't sound like leverage. I mean, that sounds like it's almost automatic. If they provide sufficient information that the buyer or whatever, the new entity is creditworthy, then novation will automatically take place. How do we then get the benefit? Based on what?
That typically comes through in the negotiations. That's been our experience in the past, where we got the 2 megawatt batteries.
But negotiations based on what? Where is what legal? What gives us the authority or the power to actually get something out of these?
If you want to novate the agreement with us, then you offer us something.
But I thought the agreement says that if the candidate meets the creditworthiness requirement, then it's automatic.
It's not automatic. It means that we wouldn't have to go to council if the novation was simply about the partner. It doesn't mean we can't negotiate for some more off that deal.
So that's what I'm asking. What does the wording that gives us the authority to negotiate, what does it say?
There's no wording in the contract, council member, that gives us the authority to negotiate. It's just...
It's if they want to novate on a different term.
Correct.
Like we did with the original novation of 4 years. At that point, they wanted a 4-year novation, so we got
so
something.
So you treat it as a new contract?
Yes.
Which would be very common. I mean, we could be negotiating the source of the energy, the quantity of megawatts, the delivery locations. That all could be something that a counterparty would want to change, and that, of course, would have to come to the
if they want to
council.
novate on the same terms, it's automatic.
That's automatic.
So that's what I'm trying to understand. Okay,
Yes.
now we got it. There's two ways this can happen.
Yes.
One is if they novate under the same terms, it's going to happen. One, if they novate with new terms, then we get something out of it.
Correct.
Right. It's almost like an assignment in that
Right.
case.
Almost like an assignment.
Right. And if it were the former, where it's on the same terms and conditions and they do meet those creditworthiness requirements, we legally could not object to the novation, so there wouldn't be much of anything for this council to approve formally
Uh-huh.
based on the terms of the WSPP.
So if we have
You don't
the
know this council.
Yeah. if we have the second scenario where the terms are being negotiated, so in essence, we're negotiating a new contract. I mean, that takes time, right? Going back and forth. So why can't then that come to council?
That would
need
under
to
the
come back to
proposal.
the city
It's
council.
only when they don't propose to change any terms. They just want to change the counterparty. That's it.
But I thought under the terms of the contract, we don't have that authority anyway, right? That's what I'm trying to get at. If this contract is merely changing, changing hands on one of the party, on the side of the party that's performing, do we have the authority to do anything about it? I mean, do we get to approve or disapprove anyway? So why does it come to us in the first place? Why are you asking council to give up that authority if it's meaningless? If it's an
This
empty
time
authority?
it's come to us because the terms are being changed. If the terms are exactly the same and they're changing the investor, it's automatic. We have no right to say no. And that shouldn't come to council. But if the terms are changed, like this time, they will bring it to council.
In this case, the delivery points.
The delivery points changed because before it was only 1 point delivery point. Now they're asking for 2 points to be the delivery point. So the terms of the contract changed, and that's why it's coming to council. So if the terms don't change and they want to change their investor, it shouldn't even come to us because we can't even say no to that.
But that's
it's
my
built
point.
in the contract.
If it shouldn't even come to us because we can't say no, then why are we even talking about this?
Well,
it seems like if the terms aren't changing, it shouldn't come to us in the first place. So this is a moot issue. If the terms are changing, then it is going to come to us even under these terms. So this is a moot issue. So
Councilmember Sinanian, we've also stipulated to the creditworthiness standard that we're requiring, and that's not something that was in the previous agreement. So in the past, they could have come to us and we would have said, we don't feel that that's a creditworthy counterparty. We're going to need to bring that to our city council for their approval. At this time, we've set 2 notches above investment grade and said that's what we're willing to approve.
So council, in essence, would have the ability to pass judgment on the creditworthiness?
If they're not at that standard, if they're below it, we would either reject it out of hand or we would bring it to this council for your consideration if it was something we were willing to recommend to you.
So in this contract, do we know who the new partner is? No. So even if they come back with a request of changing their partner and we don't even know who they are, what are we approving? Even if it comes back, we don't know who their partner is.
Their existing agreement doesn't expire till 2019 with Morgan Stanley.
Right.
Could be Morgan Stanley again.
Okay.
We don't know.
Mr. Major, you okay still?
Whatever you guys want to do.
I just, my offer is to take this. I can't imagine. They say city manager designate to be authorized, but city council should not be authorized. Why we want to do that? I mean, what the city council will do if this is something the city manager is okay to do it, but if city council to know about it is bad. I mean,
no, Mr. Argentini, I don't think that was the intention, that it's bad or that we were trying to hide anything from you. That's why I said I'm more than willing to bring any and everything to you. I don't have any problem with that. But it was because it would be a simple change of financial partner. That's my sense. And if that financial partner met all of the criteria from a creditworthiness standpoint that you all had already established, that then it was just a matter of the city manager saying, okay, so I want to go from Morgan Stanley to Wells Fargo. Okay, because they meet that.
The same
now, if
way.
they wanted to come and say, hey, we want to bring, we want to change the term. We'd like to, bring you power from overseas and come through the port of Los Angeles and do this and that. And well, that all comes back to you then, because that's a whole different scenario.
If
So
they want to change the company and they bring BBB plus, why the city council would say no? I mean, everything is the same. Why we would say no? And city manager
Well,
would
and
say
frankly, that's kind of the point.
That's
why
we're doing it.
That's kind of the point. Why bring
It's
it
about
if the council's
expedition.
gonna
It's
say
about
yes?
moving the process
It was so-
forward, and if the council wouldn't say no based on the criteria that you've already put in place, if you were to approve this evening, then
Honestly, I'm okay with the concept. I understand. What I don't understand is why is this even here? Because again, if the terms aren't going to change, then according to Ms. Godinez, we don't have the authority to act on it anyway, right?
Prior in the previous agreement, it wasn't there. So this is new
this
to
is
this
new
agreement.
to this agreement.
Mr. Sinani, and the terms do change, yes, in this deal because we're getting an additional component of renewable and the zero carbon and different delivery points. So this is a different deal than was
Right.
previously approved.
So the previous version of the agreement, what was in place, the version of the agreement that's in place now, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the old one.
Right.
Does that one give us authority to act when there is no change? Does that give the city council the authority when there is no change in the terms of the contract? Just simply one financial entity replacing another.
We didn't have that.
The agreement is silent on it, so we would
it's
default to the
silent on it.
WSPP,
Yeah. Okay, so
which has an existing
now
provision that
so
says
it's
you have
silent.
to allow
Now
it.
you want explicitly to say that there's no need for council action when there's no change in
and to give that allowance.
Right.
Yes.
And the existing agreement, Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't have the creditworthy standard established. So that's why we would definitely under the existing agreement bring it back, because there'd be the whole issue of what their creditworthiness was. Now we're going to establish this is the benchmark, and if it falls below that, if for any reason we'd be willing to recommend that, we would definitely have to come back to you. But the chances are we would never recommend that. So it was either you meet the creditworthiness, or you find another partner.
You know what? Then I'll second Councilmember Najarian's motion.
With all,
He hasn't made a motion yet.
He made a
Earlier.
motion earlier on.
So the motion is if
The original motion,
recommendation.
staff recommendation.
right, and the recommendation is just to recoup. So Mr. Agajanian will be clear. I mean, all of us will be clear on it that if there is no change in the terms, and the contract already indicates that if there is no change in the terms, and they're just changing the partners or their investors, we cannot say no to that. So those are not going to come back to us. If they want to make changes to the contract, it will come back to us.
right.
Okay, so that's what this is saying.
that was not my concern, of course. My concern is this written item, what it says here. But apparently, we want to move it. I'm not going to stop this. I'm okay. But I'm not comfortable with it. That's all I want to
I
say.
appreciate it. I understand, Mr. Manager. So there's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes, next item, please.
9 is a hearing, 9A Director of Community Development regarding 3193 Vista Del Mar Drive, Glendale, registered nomination carried over from September 12th, 2017. 9A1 is a resolution to list 3193 Vista Del Mar Drive on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources and authorize a Mills Act contract between the owner and the city.
Thank you. Ms. Spears?
Madam Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council, we're going to go to Jay Platt, who has a presentation for you. We do have two items to look at this evening. One of the items, which is the 3193 Vista Del Mar Drive project, was before you some time ago, and there were some questions regarding the wall that is in front of the home. We have some answers to those questions, and Jay Platt will cover that for you as we go through that. Jay?
Yes.
So we need to reopen the hearing?
Public hearing?
Could you actually go to PowerPoint?
Which one?
It's in the same folder.
Okay, good evening. You considered a nomination and Millsack application for this house on Vista Del Mar Drive in September. And the Historic Preservation Commission, when it reviewed the house, voted unanimously to recommend that council place this on the register and offer the Millsack contract to the property owner. We believe it's actually a very interesting Spanish colonial revival house, quite different than other houses of that style that we have designated in Glendale currently. But there was a question raised by Mr. Najarian that council picked up on about the wall that you see here in this photograph at the street. I confess that when I reviewed the nomination, went to visit the site, the wall didn't jump out at me. A lot of downslope houses in hillside areas where there's kind of a steep drop-off have walls similar to this. But Mr. Najarian's eye was better than mine because we were given the charge of doing research to find out if this was an original wall or if it was a later addition, and then also to find out if it was legal or not. It turns out that it is a later addition. We don't know exactly when it was built because it was built without permits. Neighbors suggest it was built in the 1980s or 1990s, so it has been there for some time. This wall, among hundreds of other walls and fences that are in the front setbacks of properties throughout Glendale, were looked at, I'm not sure how long ago, 11 or 12 years ago, by Neighborhood Services. And this was among those other hundreds of properties that was identified as having an illegal wall. At some point, the city determined to kind of let those stand in kind of what I would think is sort of a limbo. They're not being pursued right now in terms of either removing them or legalizing them. In general, any structure, including walls and fences over 18 inches high, is not allowed in the front setback of properties in Glendale. In terms of the nomination, the Historic Preservation Commission didn't really discuss this wall. I don't think it struck them as anything unusual, but they did not consider it specifically in their determination. So in terms of council's decision-making tonight, if council is inclined to look at this house as something worthy of the Glendale Register, which we do, the Preservation Commission does support, one option would be to let the wall stand and to let it be treated holistically whenever the city decides to treat other walls and fences. But because this is being nominated for the Register and the Mills Act, the property owner has indicated that she's open to the idea of removing the wall and then moving forward with the contract if council is inclined. Staff recommends that if you do ask that the wall be removed, that we include it as a condition to the Mills Act contract, which is a standard process that we have. And let me show you just the original condition. This is you can see here's the sidewalk, and then there's this low concrete curb. This is the original condition on this side of the block. So there's about a 6-foot drop-off from the sidewalk down to the kind of patio area in front of the house, between the wall and the house. The original condition did not have any kind of barrier in that location, but the Glendale Code does apply that the wall is technically not legal here. And you can see in some of these other slides, here's in the top left.
I'm sorry.
Yes?
Is it 6-inch drop?
6-foot drop.
6-foot drop. Oh.
Yeah, there's a 6-foot drop on this property, and it changes. This is the corner of this wall, and you can see this historic curb. I believe this is an original feature of the neighborhood. It runs along the entire side of the street across several properties. This is the drop-off immediately adjacent to it on the neighbor's property, which is even bigger than 6 feet. But this area has historically never had any kind of guardrail, railing, or wall, obviously. Here are some shots from inside the property, so you can see the grade change. This is looking down to the patio below. This is from on the patio looking up at the wall. This joint here would be sidewalk level, and then this would be the 1980s or 90s wall on top of the curb. The commission, as far as Mills Acts go, the commission routinely puts conditions into the contract to kind of do remedial work to bring a house closer to its original appearance. So if council does want the wall to be removed, we recommend that you include it as a condition to the Mills Act contract. And typically, the Preservation Commission gives kind of a time range, depending on the extent of the work, for the work to be completed by. for a project like this, I would say a time frame of 1 to 2 years would probably be appropriate, if that's the direction council wants to go.
Okay. I have few speaker cards. I want to go to the public first, and we'll make some comments. First speaker is Sonia Montejano.
How long?
3 minutes.
Yes, hi, good evening, Mayor Garpetian and members of council. My name is Sonia Montejano, and I'm here before you not just as the homeowner, but also as its greatest advocate for its preservation. Before you, you have a lot of letters and support from various people, so I'd just like to take a moment to thank them because they did spend their time writing letters on behalf of this house. Among the supporters are the Glendale Historical Society. You have 2 reputable realtors from Glendale, both from GNC Properties and from Craig Estates and Fine Properties. You have community activist and preservationist, well-respected Arlene Vidor. Her letter is before you as well. And we have various other members of the community that are speaking before for the support of this house. And I think that is a great testament to add to the validity that this house that has sat for so many years obscured under the trees of a Montecito Park area, not typically known for its Spanish homes. This home, today stands as one of very few homes of its style. And it contains, of course, as you know, outstanding examples of architectural designs and details and craftsmanship that was so prevalent of the 1920s. Just to give you a little backstory, I know last time there was an issue of square footage and such of the house. In 1924, we know that Pauline Stewart commissioned a tasteful home on this hill. And instead of building the largest home that she could have built, she focused the direction of the construction towards its details, towards its design, and to have it conform with the Spanish architectural style that was so popular in that era. And the result of those efforts is a unique design, a home that has a unique design encompassing Moorish elements which complement its hillside location. And it's reminiscent of something that you would typically see in Andalusia, Spain. It surpasses most homes of its style and kind in that it has this multiple levels, exterior stairs, patios, different window styles. It's quite unique. I am sorry that the home was not visited. I did invite you all to visit it, but I know your schedules perhaps don't allow it. So we have to rely on these photos. The house adds flair and interest to the surrounding neighborhood. It is distinguishable and recognizable. You just don't forget this house when you drive by it. The issue in regards to the front wall can be remedied. The wall does not deflect, and nor should it deflect from this architectural style. So I just urge you to please reevaluate everything that you have before you and to acknowledge that the house merits entry into the registry. I ask this of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Sean Bursell.
Good evening, Mayor Garpetian and members of council. I'm Sean Bursell, Executive Director of the Glendale Historical Society, and I'm here tonight on behalf of TGHS to express our very, very strong support for adding this property, Stewart House, to the Glendale Register of Historic Resources. And I think we need to go back to the point that Mr. Platt was making about whether the essential question here is whether this property should be on the Glendale Register, whether it meets the criteria for the register. The wall is a separate issue. You can either say tear this wall down or keep the wall. But don't let that distract you from the question of whether this house qualifies for the Glendale Register. And this house absolutely qualifies. It is a wonderful and unusual and outstanding articulation of Spanish colonial revival. Mr. Platt has talked about that somewhat. Ms. Montejano gave you a good introduction to that. What you have here is a variety of forms and masses with these terraces interspersed and cascading down a hillside. And there are a variety of windows and window sizes and exterior decoration, and you have different roof lines coming together. And staff called it whimsical, and I think that's probably a pretty good term. But whatever term you want to use, this architecture is outstanding. I don't think we have anything else like it in Glendale. And as staff has noted previously, this house retains a great deal of high level of integrity. And I've looked at the blueprints that are on the wall in that house, and I've toured the house, and I agree that the exterior features that define this house as a Spanish colonial revival are incredibly intact. And it's also noteworthy as an early example of hillside building. This was, as you kind of saw from the photos, was built below street grade in 1925, and that's pretty unusual. And it was also one of the first houses in Spar Heights, and there's a photo from the 1930s that just shows it sitting there, hanging on the side of the hillside. And I would like to suggest to you that the photos of the house that you saw tonight and that you saw at the last council consideration do not do justice to the incredible architecture of this house. I think this is a hard house to photograph. As I said, I've personally toured it, and indeed it is a wonderful, unique, and outstanding property. I also, with all due respect to staff, and they do a wonderful job, but perhaps at the prior council consideration of this, there was maybe a little too much focus on the Mills Act conditions and what had changed and what needs to be fixed in the Mills Act, instead of the core question before you, whether it qualified for the Glendale Register. Your Historic Preservation Commission approved this unanimously and enthusiastically. I was at that meeting, and I think you should support the recommendation of the Historic Preservation Commission and add this property to the Glendale Register.
Thank you. Next speaker is Leanne Reynolds, followed by Peter Rush.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council people, and staff. My name is Leanne Reynolds, and I'm a leading realtor here in the city of Glendale. I also had the personal privilege of representing the applicant when she was a buyer purchasing this home. So I probably have more experience and time in this home than anybody in this room outside the owner, with all the inspections that we've done, et cetera, during that process. I've also taken quite a bit of time to read the entire packet that the planning department has put together, and I would concur that this is a very exhaustive and accurate assessment of this particular home and the features. I agree everything that Sean said about some of the absolutely unique features and special conditions of this Spanish colonial revival home. Therefore, I am in support, absolutely, of this being on the city landmark and also on the Mills Act. I'd also like to say one other thing about this particular applicant. This applicant has served the city very well, and she will certainly be in compliance with anything that you feel necessary for this particular house to be on a landmark. She has refurbished a prior home, the Lewis home on Royal Boulevard, and had that submitted as a landmark home. And she's also been a director at the Doctor's House for over a decade, so she served the city very well. Just want you to tell that that's a lot of integrity behind this person, so she wouldn't be here unless she thought that this was particularly important for the city. Regarding the wall, again, I spent many hours there on the property. There is a huge drop. Here is the sidewalk. Here is her patio. So if that wall were to be gone, as an owner, I would put up a wrought iron wall or something so that people didn't trip and literally fall down her hillside and into the patio. So, and also I can't imagine if it rains, then what happens? Then there's no barrier whatsoever for the water to go down into the patio and then into the front door. So, I concur with Sean. There are two separate issues. We're looking at the structure of the house, the integrity, and for all the reasons I mentioned, I absolutely am a strong supporter of this being on the register. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Peter Rush.
Good evening, Mayor Garpetian, My name and council members and city staff. My name is Peter Roosh, and I'm curator of the Doctor's House Museum. I want to cite a few comments made by Arlene Vidor, who was on the Historic Preservation Commission for 7.5 years and was chair for 2.5 of those years. She's the only other person I know of that is more of a preservation activist than the owner of this house. Arlene says, in 2016, the Glendale Historical Society sponsored a Spanish colonial revival home tour. Prior to the tour, I gave a public education talk on Spanish colonial architecture to a full house at the Brand Library Recital Hall. 3193 Vista Del Mar was featured prominently in my presentation because it possesses features that exemplify the Spanish colonial revival style, as well as unusual features that raise the bar on its eligibility in the opinion of many, including me. At that time, I examined the house inside and out. The house has multiple 1- and 2-story sections, making it highly asymmetrical. Asymmetry being a defining feature of Spanish colonial revival style. The stucco pattern on the exterior walls is unusually artful. Patterns like this are uncommon and uniquely reflect the 1920s fascination with stucco patterning typical during the Spanish colonial revival trend of the 1920s and 1930s. The staff report convinces me that the property meets the standard for listing and then some. The alteration issues cited do not warrant disqualification. The house is cited correctly as having a high level of integrity, more than some other houses that have been designated. Alterations are commonplace, and those found on this property do not preclude designation. I'm sorry it came up for nomination after my tenure on the Historic Preservation Commission ended. I would have voted yes with a big smile on my face. And I urge you to vote for historic designation for this house and support the unanimous vote of the current Historic Preservation Commission, and please do it with a smile on your face. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, that's the last speaker. Who would like to go first?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Maybe Mr. Platt can answer. So there's two things before us. One is designating this to be on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources. That's a singular and separate item. The second is to give it the Mills Act status.
Yes.
What are the standards? Are the standards the same for both?
The requirement for Mills Act is that the property is either on the Glendale Register or is a contributing structure in a historic district. We typically bring the nomination and the application concurrently to both HPC and to council, but they could be separated out.
And what happens if this is just issued a place on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources? What does that mean to the home?
It is protected under the Historic Preservation Ordinance. We would make sure that any alterations proposed in the future meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation.
Okay. Well, since I'm the one who opened this can last time, I do want to say that I wish that the Historic Preservation Commission was made aware of the wall issue, because it's an obvious feature. In fact, you have to look over the wall to appreciate the house. But I don't blame you, because you mentioned it in the staff report that went to council in August. I think the report was written.
We just acknowledged that the wrought iron arch is not original. At that point, we hadn't done the research on the wall itself.
So here's my problem, and I'm going to read this from the report that was given to the Historic Preservation Commission. It says the only major permit available for the property is the original building permit for its construction in 1925. A site visit confirmed a number of changes made to the house, primarily pertaining to window replacements and the addition of gates and railings. At the front of the property, both the arched gate and the retaining wall that is set within are recent additions. So this is what the HPC should have been reading. You wrote this report, I presume, so you raised it.
Actually, forgot that I'd written that. So.
Well, someone, anyway, it's in the report.
Or duplicate did.
The staggered block wall near the patio at the front facade is also a recent addition. Original blueprints of the house evidence that the fenestration patterns of the house are a variation from what is typically expected of Spanish colonial revival houses, given that there's a mix of metal and wood windows. A divided light casement window at the second story level of the southeast corner has been replaced with an aluminum window with true muntins. A non-original wood window also located at the second story of the southeast corner is in deteriorated condition. The original blueprints suggest that a window in the kitchen was replaced with French doors at an unknown date. Decorative metal covers, grills have been added over a number of windows. The blue tile ceramic fountain located between the terraces appears to be the same size as the fountain depicted on the original blueprints, but it is likely a later alteration. The gate adjacent to the detached garage and railing on top of the garage are recent additions. Finally, the garage doors were replaced with metal doors, and that's obviously addressed. So my problem is that there's been a lot of additions to this house, and there are no permits for any of this. The report says it's only the original permit from 1925. So I have a problem with that. I have a problem conveying the highest level of appreciation for a property that has this many alterations that haven't been permitted, that haven't been vetted through the proper process. So that's the problem I have with the house. And it may look great, and it may, as is now, take the snapshot, be a perfect example of Spanish colonial revival, but we're rewarding someone, not Ms. Montanajo. And don't say it's not about her. She is a fine person. We're not judging people, whether they're good or bad. We're judging the prior owners who've acted on this house. And I can't bring this house to that level, the highest level. Is there a higher level than the Mills Act?
There is the National Register, but
okay.
This is not.
This is not. For us as a city council, the highest level that we could confirm on a home is the Mills Act. And I just can't get there. I can maybe get to the historic register, but I can't give a house that has this many changes that weren't completely vetted by the HPC the highest level. I just can't do that.
If I can address that, just to put it in context, very few houses that have ever been nominated to the register would meet the highest standard of never having any changes made to them. These houses are 80, 90 years old in many cases. Swimming pools have been added. Small additions have been made, windows have been changed out. In terms of our experience looking at all of the range of properties that we've considered for the Glendale Register since I've been here, and I'm sure before, I believe this house does have very high integrity. You're right, there are changes, and we try honestly to acknowledge those in our staff reports, but almost all of those things are either minor changes. And I think when you mentioned metalwork, there is a lot of original metalwork here. I think we saw a couple of things that we weren't sure about, so we kind of just draw that for the Commission's attention. Site work, like perimeter walls, very common to not have as original. And we do give priority to the primary structure, the house, but we also do, of course, look at the entire site, perimeter walls, hardscape, landscape in some cases. Something like the fountain, it's very rare to find an original functioning fountain. So this fountain was altered at some point. You wouldn't have to get a permit to alter that fountain.
Right. You know, the problem I have is that there are tens, if not hundreds, of homeowners who have done changes without permits that are in code enforcement proceedings. And I don't think it's fair to any of them to pick one house that has changes, minor or not. A minor alteration to my window still needs a permit to convey the highest level. And on top of that, so I can give it the historic register. Why in the world are we calling it the Stewart House? The poor lady didn't even want to be called Stewart. She changed her name later in life to be called Sullivan.
She may have remarried. We don't know the story.
But that's the name she wanted. I mean, when it says she changed her name to Pauline Sullivan. So,
if you'd like to know, we have an official naming policy developed by the Historic Preservation Commission, so that we have kind of a sequence of names that we'll use. If a house was given a historic name, we have Colonial View and Cedar Knoll. We'll go with the historic name that was given to the house. If we don't, in the absence of that, we go with the original owner, even if the original owner wasn't significant. If there was a significant later owner, we'll usually go with that name. Sometimes that gets hyphenated, so a few different things, but we have an official policy, and this naming of the Stewart House follows that policy.
Well, I'm not going to fight about the name. I just wanted to point out the unusual nature of the name. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Mayor. I hope I was clear with my position.
Thank you, Mr. Najarian. Any more comments?
Well, I want me to go next. I was in support of this home to be listed the last time it appeared. And I was also going by what the HPC said. And according to what I'm reading, it says, although a few windows have been replaced and decorative gates and ironwork have been added at the front and rear of the property, the house retains a high degree of historic integrity and presents itself as an excellent example of a Spanish colonial revival style. I don't think we often get homes or houses that look like this, that have this historic integrity. I think the changes are minor. I think she's willing to do away with the wall, which was your original, Councilmember Najarian, your original issue with the home. I'd like to see maybe just cut it down in half, because I didn't realize that there was that huge drop. Because one of the questions I asked was about the safety. If we remove the wall, are people going to fall? You know, and the answer was it could be but she wants to put shrubbery or something there to prevent that from happening. I also feel that, she is a preservationist. She is an advocate of historic homes. I know that she is taking every opportunity to ensure the preservation of this property. And I really agree with the HPC, and I think that it should be listed. And I think she should receive the Mills Act, because it's going to take funds to make the changes that are necessary, that we're advocating for. And so I am all for her getting the Mills Act as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sidani?
Okay. So, I think it's a fact that some significant changes have been made to this property, but significant is, probably in the eye of the beholder, because the reality is this is an 80 or no, this is more like a 90-some-year-old home, 1924. And real people lived here, and they had real lives, real needs, and time sort of necessitates that you adjust to it, and sometimes your home has to adjust to those needs. So people make changes. That's the way it is. And yes, if you look at historic preservation in absolutist terms, once something's altered, something's changed, it's no longer that original. The question becomes, at what point do those changes trigger a non-historic character? And I don't know whether this home has reached that benchmark. So I'm a little torn right now. On the issue of the wall, I'm sure it has practical uses. I'm sure there was a need for it when it was put up. But what I don't like is, as my colleague pointed out, is that, if there was someone right now that had the same compelling reasons to put up that wall, the same people that are today saying, well, it's just a wall, it's a safety, it's a safety feature, why not have it, let it be there, they would stand up and they would fight and they would say, don't allow these people to put up a wall because that's going to ruin the historic nature of the home. So can't have it both ways. It's either one or the other. At the end of the day, we want to preserve these homes. We want these homes to remain as original as possible, even though they've been changed somewhat. Because if you don't give them that protection, they're going to change even more. At some point, they are going to cross over that sort of that point of no return, at which point it's no longer historic. In other words, I'm very conflicted, and I don't know right now how I'm going to vote. I'm going to think about it a little bit.
Okay. Mr. Al-Ghazali.
I have problem with the wall. I mean, the other problems that are mentioned, I don't know. Maybe I can pass. But the wall I have problem with, because 3 weeks ago a lady came ask to meet with me, and the inspector came. There is a wall, retaining wall between her house and next door neighbor, and has been there for like 25 years. And the inspector was saying, I have no choice. I gave a notice to her that this wall should come down. And this is illegal. There is no permit for it, even though I look at the wall and this is like 30 years old wall. And I don't know the difference. If that woman who was telling me that she can't sleep for months from the time that they received the notice of having illegal wall, and what would be the difference with this? That if I approve it, it means I'm approving a house with illegal wall. And then what will be my answer to others who will come and similar issues will be raised? So that's a problem with this.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, depending on the circumstances that each property owner is facing, they have the right to come in and request to file for a variance. Now, will they be able to get that variance approved ultimately depends on the circumstances of the property. So not knowing the details of the person that you are referring to, and the option before you this evening as it relates to the wall can be twofold. It can be that you have the item listed, if you were so inclined to move forward with the designation, to have it removed within a period of time, whether it's 1 year or 24 months. So that's one piece of it. You can do that. But knowing that there possibly are some issues as it relates to safety because of the differential between where the road is and where the property lies, if you'd like, staff can work with the property owner to see if there are other options for her to go through, one of which could be a variance. Again, not wanting to give any sort of false hope as the city attorney is looking at me, because I don't know if that would pass muster. But that is an option, that if A doesn't work, then you go ahead and go to B, which is removal of the wall, and putting in something else to handle the issues as it relates to safety. Just putting that out there so that you have those options before you.
Okay. Any more comments? I have a question for Mr. Platt. What is the square footage of this house?
It is 2,176.
And have you checked the assessor's records to see what does the assessor record?
That is from the assessor's records.
And do we know what the as-built is, the correct square footage of the house?
We would have to measure it to find out about that. We don't have those records in the city.
Because I think that's one of the things that for any not just this case, any historic preservation application that comes to HPC, we have to make sure that there are no illegal additions to the house.
Yeah, it's from our inspection of the house. I don't believe there are any illegal additions or any additions of any kind. The owner does have the blueprints of the house framed in the house. I've looked at those. They look very close to what was built, but I haven't seen any room or any. There's no indication. I can't say with 100% certainty, but it doesn't look like there's any change like that.
I think that's one of the things that we have to make sure. Now, we're lucky that the owner has the blueprint, and you can maybe compare it to what's as-built, the as-built of the. Sorry.
One thing we always do for all nominations is provide the Preservation Commission with the permit history, And so they have an opportunity to review that. If we saw any glaring differences, something that wasn't permitted, we would look into it, but I can't think of a situation where that's come up for like an addition or something.
Mr. Mayor?
And
Your line, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mr. Najarian.
Did you say that there was a permit long time ago, like 1920s?
Yeah, there's an original construction permit for the house.
And what was the square footage on
Back
that?
then, they didn't have square footages. They just gave a rough dimension of the footprint of the house. So if it's a one-story or two-story, it would be the same rough dimension. You can sort of start maybe guessing the square footage, but on this house, which has a very unique floor plan where the first floor is different than the second floor and it has many levels, it would be impossible to guess the square footage based on that. But again, there's no indication that there are any
You
additions
mean there
to
is
the
no
house.
measurement on the length of the wall?
I can't remember the specifics. It would say something like 24 by 38, and that's it. And it'll say whether it's a one-story or a two-story house.
I'm done.
Okay.
Later permits are different.
Do the neighbors have the wall in front of their property?
Some do, some don't. My best understanding is that this wall, this little curb here, which is about 6 inches above sidewalk height, is original, and it's a concrete wall. And you can imagine that since there's a drop off here and an even bigger one on the neighbor next door, that's a retaining wall that's actually holding up the street and the sidewalk. So that wall isn't going anywhere. What we're talking about is this 3.5 or 4 foot wall that's built on top of that concrete wall. If I can, the discussion of safety came up. Variances are unlikely for a wall in this situation, but I'm not a zoning planner, but I want to throw out an idea that we could investigate if the council is inclined to designate and then look into altering the wall. On top of retaining walls, there's something called freeboard in many cases, which is an area that rises above the point where the earth intersects with the wall. And the idea, especially in a downslope situation, would be that that would capture kind of runoff or anything. If our code allowed freeboard, I believe in some cases it's up to 2 feet. There's the possibility that a lower wall could be left here. But I can't promise that, so it might, to be legal, it might have to come all the way down to this curb.
I mean, we can't design that wall or the one behind it today. There are thousands of homes that are in the same situation. They sit below the street level, and they usually, I don't know how this property was built, but they usually have a slope. So this was basically cut and patio was built. That's why they put the wall.
This is a sheer drop. Yeah.
None of the properties are built that way without having a retaining wall or a wall on if they have that big of a drop.
But the property next door keeps that drop. So this is
that's what I'm saying.
So some houses have built walls on top of this, and some haven't.
And this is not the only house that has this issue of the rain and rainwater and storm water was mentioned. I think the issue that I have. Let me see if I have any other questions for you, so I won't keep you waiting there. Thank you, Mr. Platt. The issue, I agree with Mr. Najarian. I think I'm okay with the historic designation, but not with the Mills Act. And the only problem is there are additions done to the house, even if there's a window change or any other thing without a permit. As realtors, I'm in the same business. We have hundreds of cases that people purchased homes that their windows were replaced, and now they're responsible for turning it back to the original condition. And what we told them was, when you purchase the house, you should have checked the permits. All it takes is $17. They will email you all the permits when you purchase a house. That's our basically answer to them when they come back and say, look, I bought this house. I didn't know the windows were replaced. But if it's a historic house in this caliber and the windows are, I don't know, aluminum or any other material, it's very obvious that they were replaced, and if there is no permits, it's very difficult for me to vote for the Mills Act because there were additions done without a permit, and because we are trying to enforce every property that we get a complaint over, that's a problem for me to that. As far as the house itself, it has a really nice character. It's a good designed architectural house, but the wall, I think, should be removed. it should be part of the condition. But I'm okay with the historic designation, but not the Mills Act. And I think for the future properties, we have to be very. But Mills Act is the highest and highest of the highest. So if we have done that before, I think we need to look into it and not continue granting Mills Act because with the historic preservation, historic designation, the house will be protected, and I think that's the main goal. And we're not judging the person; we're judging the house and what's before us. So, Mr. Arjani.
I have a question for City Attorney. Let's assume we say take this wall down, like Ronald Reagan was saying. So, and then what happens? Somebody comes down there and falls in there. Then we told the homeowner. So where we stand with the City Council and City, where we stand with it?
From a strictly liability standpoint, Councilmember Agajanian, the city would not. The city would not have liability.
Good.
Because we're just enforcing our code, so the law is very clear. We cannot be liable for enforcing our code or approving permits or not approving permits. So
we won't be liable?
The city will not.
Because we told them.
You will be liable. No, just can't.
I mean, the City Council.
No, the City Council and the city will not be liable.
Okay.
Councilmember Devine.
Final comment. One of the reasons that people request the Mills Act is because replacing any part of a historical home is much more expensive than just replacing, if I were to replace a window in my house. And so, and in this house, we're only talking a few windows. I don't know if it's one or two. How many windows, Mr. Platt, are we talking about in this house? But it is expensive.
I have, whoops. If you could, if I could show you the windows. It's really one window was replaced by the current owner with a window that the Historic Preservation Commission found appropriate, and there's one wood window that's deteriorated that will be replaced, as all deteriorated windows have to be over time. And your point about the Mills Act is very valid. One of the things the Mills Act does is free up money for people to make restoration work on the house possible. And what we're doing is bringing houses that are really good, solid houses that have historical meaning, and we're bringing them closer to their original appearance by applying the Mills Act. So it's become a great incentive for us to learn more about the city and to protect important resources that we wouldn't really see otherwise.
So I think to deny the Mills Act because of her having to replace windows is not a strong enough argument. I think plus if she's going to have to do away with the wall and other work, it's going to be expensive. And I think the house, not the owner, but the house deserves to have that care because it is an extraordinary house.
Yeah, but the Mills Act is not going to have to do anything with the wall. The Mills Act is not going to pay for the removal of the wall.
Well, it would certainly help offset that cost.
How so? Because it's not part of the house.
Well, you can use the Mills Act money for any part of the property. It applies to the entire property. Just for your reference, these are the two windows that we're talking about. This is the deteriorated wood window. This is the replacement window. We did note in the staff report it is unusual to have this mixture of wood and steel windows, but that appears to be the case on those drawings. And the commission also included, there was some patchwork that had to be done on the stucco because of the way the old window was installed here. This was a non-original window that was replaced. So the Mills Act condition also calls for repairing the stucco to make it look more typical of the rest of the house.
That window was replaced without a permit?
I believe this window was permitted? Or this is...
You should know, I mean...
Okay, I'm sorry. This one was not permitted. One other thing that we could do is work with the applicant. There's a process called legalization when work is done without permits. If it's appropriate, we can legalize it and the applicant pays the fee and obtains the permit. If the work isn't appropriate, we're in a position to then do work that brings it back to what it should be.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Najarian.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to move.
Microphone.
I'm going to move. I'm going to try and be very fair here. I'm going to move that the property.
Mr. Mayor, close it here.
Oh, need to
I'm going to close the public. We can close it after, but
okay.
I'm going to close the
So
public.
I'm going to move that the property located at 3193 Vista Del Mar Drive be designated as a historic resource in the Glendale Register of Historic Resources, with only the conditions A, B, and C that were listed in Section 3. Keep the wall, but only put the house on the historic resource and not move for a Mills Act.
And keep the wall?
Keep the wall. That's the equity, if you will, that I'm putting into that motion. Only repair the one window, fix the wood on the other one, repair the stucco patch, the garage door. Where's Mr. Platt? Those are the four things, Mr. Platt. Garage door, replace the one window, fix the wooden one that's deteriorated, and fix the stucco. Keep the wall, but it only gets to be a historic resource, not a Mills Act. That's my motion.
Okay. Before, I think he has
I think we both have a couple points we'd like to make on that, if there's a second.
Mr. Platt?
You can, but...
In our and Mr. Garcia can correct me if I'm wrong, in our historic preservation ordinance, there's no mechanism to force someone to do work once they're put on the Glendale Register. We use the Mills Act to do that.
And in addition to that, I would just note that the Mills Act contracts are provided as an incentive for folks to come and apply to be on the register. And I'm not sure that this applicant would even want to be on the register without the Mills Act contract.
Well, why don't we ask her, Mr. Mayor? Because I don't want to go that way if that's not what she's interested in.
Can you come to the podium?
I don't want to force upon the homeowner any result.
Mr. Najarian, what's
So I
your
guess the question is, you heard my points there. Would you agree to
Yes.
that? Or do you want Mills Act or nothing on this?
I want it all,
Or nothing?
or nothing.
Okay, so
Then I withdraw my motion.
I'd like to make a motion to move the item, the resolution for the Glendale Register of Historic Resources, and authorize a Mills Act contract.
is there a second? Okay, that motion dies. Any more discussions?
I have no other motion to make.
Mr. Sinanian, did you make up your mind?
I'm sorry. So but your motion is
My motion was a halfway,
Yeah.
and the resident indicated that she wasn't interested in that. She wanted it all or nothing. Ms. Devine made the motion for it all. It didn't receive a second.
Right.
So unless someone's going to make another motion, the item fails.
Yeah, I don't have another motion.
Okay, so the item fails.
If we could have a motion just to deny the request, since that's not, so we have finality.
I move to deny the request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Zagajanian?
I say yes now?
To deny.
Yes, to deny. Yes.
Motions to deny the
Yes.
application.
Yes.
Devine?
No.
Najarian?
Yes.
Sinanian?
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian?
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is also a hearing, Director of Community Development regarding 1242 Bruce Avenue, Glendale Register nomination. B1 is a resolution to list 1242 Bruce Avenue on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources and authorize a Mills Act contract between the owner and the city. B2 is a resolution to not list 1242 Bruce Avenue on the Glendale Register of Historic Resources and authorize a Mills Act contract between the owner and the city.
Okay. Pierce?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Jay Platt is here to do the second designation.
Pulling a switcheroo, Deepika Dalawal, our preservation planning intern, is going to present tonight.
Okay. Open the public hearing. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Today we are looking at 1242 Bruce Avenue for the Glendale Register and Mills Act. This is a 1939 French eclectic house that's located between the Glen Oaks and Glenwood neighborhood. It's not only an interesting house architecturally, but it also has a rich history that's associated with Glendale. So this house is a very whimsical and unique example of the French eclectic style with very few changes made over the years. We see a number of interesting features at the front of the house, including this very large chimney, a very steeply pitched roof, a bay window with diamond pane glass, and the use of a variety of materials including stone, brick, leaded glass, wood, and stucco. All of the features come together playfully to create a very picturesque appearance at the front that is almost reminiscent of a storybook house and makes it really stand out from other houses in the neighborhood. Here we see a detailed view of the front door and entry surround. We see a close-up of the interesting woodwork and variety of materials. As mentioned before, this house was built in 1939 and it was designed by architect Ernest Irving Fries, who worked with local Glendale builder Roy Kent. We see a picture of the original designs at the bottom left, and we see how the house was built to very closely match this design. Fries does appear to be an architect of interest. He produced a number of written architectural pieces, but more research would be needed for that. And in addition to being a very intact house of great architectural interest, the property also has an additional interesting layer of history. It was built for musician Lorne Whitney. He was a very talented organist, and he asked Kent to build him a house specifically to house his very large organ, which explains the very extreme pitch of the roof that we saw in the first picture. The picture on the top left actually shows Whitney in the subject property, sitting there with his organ. And he actually got his start in the music industry playing the organ in a religious group called Good Ship Grace. His career really grew during his time at 1242 Bruce. He performed on radio stations in LA, and he even had his organ connected to a local radio station in Pasadena so he could do broadcasts from his own home. He was not just a musician, he was also a businessman. In 1950, he opened his own recording studio here in Glendale known as the Whitney Recording Studio. We see a book that is on the recording studio at the bottom of the screen, and both prominent and religious and non-religious groups recorded here. These interior pictures of the home show the alcove where the organ was once located and a complex network of screen elements that house the pipes for the organ. And the picture at the bottom right shows a view of the screen from the inside looking down. And these pictures show the rest of the house. At the top left, we see a covered patio and garage peeking out from the right, and then we see a secondary entrance into the kitchen. So the Preservation Commission found 1242 Bruce eligible under criterion 2 and 3. It's a unique interpretation of the French eclectic style and really stands out compared to other houses. And it's also significant for its association with Lorne Whitney. It was specifically designed to meet his needs as a musician, and he was a prominent figure in the local music industry, and he lived a large part of his life at 1242 Bruce from 1939 to 1975. The house has undergone a few changes over the years, but the Commission did recommend a Mills Act condition calling for the replacement of one non-original window. And the second condition was to replace the non-original garage door, which the owner has already successfully fulfilled. Here in this slide, we see the former aluminum garage door at the top left, and the bottom right shows the new wood garage door that is more in line with the style of the house. That's it, and I'm here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
Just one question. By any chance, do you know what's the name of Mr. Whitney's studio?
It was called the Whitney Recording Studio.
And you don't know where it was located?
1516 West Glen Oaks Boulevard.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
Can we go back to some of those other pictures?
Yes. Here?
Keep going. One more. And again. Sort of like the front of the house. One more. Okay, right there. So, are we going to make him fix that chimney?
Oh, no.
Is that the way it's supposed to look?
Yeah, so that chimney...
How would you describe that other than eclectic?
Quirky, unique. As I mentioned before, the extreme pitch of the roof was made to literally house his organ.
No, I'm not talking about the roof. but the chimney itself. Is there a name for that style?
It fits.
Is that a fair question? I'm getting gasps from the audience and from council. It looks like it's...
No, that's a completely fair question.
Thank you.
This is, it's kind of you might call it rusticated. The idea is it was designed to look as if the plaster had fallen off.
That's my
but
point.
It's designed to look old, to give it that kind of old
So when it was
character.
new, it looked like that.
And when it was new, it looked like that, yeah.
Okay.
So
I'll make a comment first. I drove out to see this house because I wasn't familiar with it, and it is extraordinary. It is a gem. It is well taken care of. It is a real, it is unique on that street. It's a beautiful example of this architecture. It's
what kind is
pretty
it?
amazing. Pretty amazing.
It's called French.
the style name we use is French Eclectic. Which is based on when we did our historic district guidelines. The consultant identified a lot of the different styles we find in Glendale, so we use those same style names when we're outside of the districts when they apply.
Yeah, and the chimney's striking. The chimney is striking. The pictures don't do it justice.
That's what you said about the last one.
Well, I was right about the last.
Okay, let's see. Are you done, Ms.
Yes, I'm in support of this one as well.
Okay.
Is there any changes from the original building? On last one you said other stuff was changed. This is everything original?
There have been a few changes, and we can take a closer look. It's not working. So in 1951, this change was actually made by Whitney himself. He added to the detached garage that we see at the top left, he added a shop and a laundry. And like I said, this was during his time, and also the covered patio. And then in 1993, there was a dormer window added at the rear, which I don't think we have a picture of. And then the garage door was replaced, but as I mentioned before, the owners already restored that.
So, just two quick thoughts on the changes. When a change is made by the original owner, if you determine that this is significant for Lauren Whitney's occupancy of the house, what's called officially in our world, the period of significance extends through his occupation of the house. So a change that he personally made, supervised, chose to have the way it looks, would be considered part of his decision-making during that time. So that would be just the same as if it were an original feature in preservation terms. And then in terms of the garage door, the Preservation Commission had recommended that as a Mills Act condition. Generally, our applicants wait until the contract is signed and ready to go. This applicant decided he was so excited to bring the house back that he made the choice. And I think it's a good example of the power of the Mills Act to really remove typically replace features like garage doors and bring the house closer to an appropriate appearance.
Mr. Mayor, 1 second, please. So there were additions made to the house, the studio, and the.
Just the only addition made to the house is this left on the top left picture, the extension of the garage to create kind of an office. I think it was an office or.
It was called the shop/laundry, but it was a space that Whitney created himself.
How big is that space?
It looks like it's probably 200 and something square feet.
And is there a permit for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a permit for
Yes,
that.
that is permitted.
Okay, so there's a difference right now. See,
Even where we are,
I was going to ask. So, and that shade, the structure, the shade structure. Is there a shade structure sticking out on the left part of that left?
Yes, and that's part
like
of
a carport?
No, it's
So-
not a carport. It's a covered patio.
It's a covered patio,
Yeah.
but it's attached to the house.
It's attached to the addition to the garage. The garage is detached from the house. The addition was made to the detached garage, and that extends it for a covered patio.
Okay, Mr. Agajani.
I have a question. Mr. Whitney bought this house. He was not asked somebody to do the architecture job, and
No, he commissioned the house specifically so that he could put his pipe organ into the house. The reason the roof on the house is as exaggerated, this is even more exaggerated than most houses of this style, and he needed that space so that he'd get the reverberation for the pipe organ. And then you have this area. We don't usually include interior pictures, but we thought it was kind of interesting because of how the use of the house generated how it looks from the outside to some degree. So this is kind of the reverberation chamber that's up in the attic. And then the lattice work you see is what you see there. That's how the sound filtered down into the living room.
so this was built for him.
Yeah, it was specifically designed by Fries for him and also for his organ.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Any more questions from staff?
No, I'm just a comment. I mean, he built this house for his family and his organ, his family too. So which is good.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you don't have any more questions from staff, I have one card. Sean Bursell.
Thank you again, Mayor Garpetian and members of council. I'm Sean Bursell, Executive Director of the Glendale Historical Society, and I'm here speaking in support of a strong support of adding this property, Whitney House, to the Glendale Register. What a super house, and I'm so glad Councilmember Devine drove by it, because you really do have to see it. And that's why Councilmember Najarian, there were gasps in the audience, because those of us who have seen it and seen that chimney, once you see it.
Facetious, Mr. Purcell.
Okay.
So, in case you don't know my humor, that's
all right. I missed that. Okay, thank you.
I've seen that style before.
And it is it's just fabulous. And this house belongs on the register, as staff noted, for both its architecture and its history. And as we've noted before, you only need to meet one criterion. This meets two. And it's the architecture is just an excellent example, as staff said, of the French style. It has some of these whimsical, as the staff said, storybook touches, and it really is, as Commissioner Devine said, it's unique on that block and unique in Glendale, and it's unusual because not only was the house built for this family, but it was designed to accommodate a musical instrument. And how often do you ever see a house that's designed to accommodate a musical instrument? And it just is, I say, just a super articulation. And the history of Loren Whitney, it's himself, as staff is delineated. He was important for his contributions to music and to recording. I don't think they mentioned in his recording studio, in addition to his Christian music and his organ music, but he used his studio for albums by Barry White, Pat Benatar, Blondie, Frank Zappa, and the Knack. Billy Joel played the organ at his studio for his Piano Man LP. And so he's associated with the history of the music industry as well. And he lived there for 35 years, so a long period of significance, as staff has mentioned. So in light of the architectural and historical significance of Whitney House, the Glendale Historical Society strongly supports this nomination to the register, and we hope you will approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, you mentioned that Councilmember Paula Devine visited the house. I used to pass by this house so often, from 1994 until 2016. So I'm very familiar with this house. Of course, from outside of it.
Right.
I've never been inside the house, just for your information.
I'm told it's wonderful inside. I'm glad you're familiar with it. It's a beautiful house. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Najarian.
Even though my sense of humor is unappreciated in these chambers, I agree with Mr. Bursell. I agree with Ms. Dhaliwal. I agree with the applicant. This is a fine example of the French eclectic style, and certainly the work and life achievements of Mr. Whitney are renowned. So this house meets my scrutiny.
So does that mean that you agree with Councilmember Devine as well?
Yes.
Good, okay.
I don't know how you're going to
hear-
vote, but yes, with Ms. Devine as well. This house meets my scrutiny for a Mills Act and a Glendale Historic Register.
Okay.
I
ask
will
one more-
let Ms. Devine move it if that's
I have one question before making a
choice.
Mr. Platt, if you come up. Are the windows replaced on this house or they're original?
They're original. There's one replacement window, and there's a Mills Act condition to replace that.
Okay, so all windows are original.
All of the other windows are original.
So this is the difference between this house and the prior house. It meets the criteria, two criterions, and it's easier to, because to me, I'm more inclined to approve this project based on the criteria number 2, the history of the house and the owner that was built it. And from the outside, I know the house as well. From the outside, and by the way, I just came back last night around 7 o'clock. That's why I didn't get a chance to go see this house. But we usually go see every single house that we work on. It's not that, one goes and the other don't. And I want to put that out there, that this council is responsible and we drive by the neighborhood and look at the houses. But as far as this house being built around the organ, to bring the organ in and then house it, you can't tell that from the outside. So it's a good part of the report that adds to the history of the house. So I'm in favor of it, mostly based on criteria number 2, and the difference between this house and the other house has no illegal or unpermitted work done to the house, either small or large, because I think it's important for public to know if you have things done that it's not permitted, it's very difficult for us to grant the Mills Act. So with that, is there a motion?
I just want to add also, this makes it easier because, as has been mentioned, the original owner lived there and made some expansion or extended the house. So you say that's part of the criteria that it's considered as original building when the original owner makes any modification, extension.
It helps us, especially when it's eligible because of the original owner. But I'll just reiterate, many houses that have been brought to the Historic Preservation Commission and Council do have additions. Hopefully they're permitted. From now on, we're going to be checking that very, very carefully. And in general, in the preservation field, the presence of additions in and of just by themselves don't necessarily mean that you can't find something eligible when it has other aspects that you feel are worthy of protection. So,
and if I may add to that, it only needs to meet one criterion. It doesn't have to meet 2 or 3. It only needs to meet 1 in order to be considered for the registry.
And if the council was inclined to only designate under 1, we would have to know about that because that becomes part of the public record about the designation. So, but we're recommending 2, of course.
Well, you may have 2 or 3 criterion that they comply with, or you can approve it based on 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 criterion. But if there are additions done to the house which is not permitted, then it becomes an issue. So that's what we're getting at. I understand there's a history that based on history you can approve the project. It doesn't have to be based on design, but if it's based on criterion 2, which is the history of the owner who built the house, but if there are illegal additions done to the house, we will have a hard time approving a project that has illegal additions to it, unpermitted additions to the house. So that's the thing.
My best sense is that it's rare that illegal additions are made. We do permit research on all of the properties. We give those permits to the Preservation Commission for their review, and they determine whether those additions are significant enough to suggest that the house is ineligible. There are numerous nominations every year that go to HPC that never come to council because the commission has looked at the house and said the additions that were made just detract too much from its character and they don't want to recommend it to council.
Okay. Councilmember Sinani.
Okay, so on this property, in essence, I agree with my colleagues. Not only is this house unique and historic, has been altered significantly, the addition really doesn't seem to have taken away from its overall character. But also, Mr. Whitney was a legitimate musician. I mean, recording. Musician, yeah, an organist, and had a recording studio, and lived there for over 25 years, close to 30 years. I remember 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, we had a Mills Act candidate where a certain radio person, no, not the priest, this one is even better, a certain radio personality had lived there for 3 years. And that was the argument that was being made for why this, that one criterion was met. And I think council disagreed with that. This isn't the case here. I mean, the gentleman had commissioned the home, I mean, for him, for his family, for his organ, and lived there for a long time. And if you look him up, Lauren Whitney, you'll see that he's identified as a Glendale. He's identified as Glendale and like Santa Ana or something, but Glendale is definitely included there as place of origin for him, or somewhere that he's associated with. So I'm going to support this wholeheartedly.
Okay, so I'm going to close the motion. I'm going to close the public.
Okay.
I have to close the public hearing first. Then who made the motion?
Ms. Devine did. No, Ms. Devine did. I defer.
Ms. Devine did, and a second by Mr. Agajanian. Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Okay, first speaker is Razmik Simonian. Mr. Simonian? No? Haik Mahmourian? Followed by Randy Werner. Followed by Mike Van Gorder.
He spoke.
And
Maybe he wants to speak again.
Randy Werner?
I know he wants to.
Oh, he can't. Oh, that's right.
Go ahead.
Good morning, folks. Good morning.
Morning to you. It is morning for me.
Good evening, folks, and it's good to be here. Thank you for the work that you do. I'm here with a lot of the other folks who are here to speak on behalf of bringing rent control to Glendale. My name is Haik Mahmourian, and I have been a resident of Glendale for 17 years. And I strongly believe that without strong support on policy and regulation level, renters, who are 2/3 of the population of Glendale, are left extremely vulnerable to being pushed out by rent hikes. A rent control measure is meant to protect safety and security in the city by creating a framework where all residents can predictably live in the city long term. To be clear, a rent control measure always includes protections for landlords to make sure that inflation and other living and operating expenses are accounted for. It's kind of a comment to what was said earlier by landlords. So I would say that this rent control only affects greedy landlords or increasingly large property owner companies who put huge profit margins above the most basic human rights and basic decency. I also want to state that while I appreciate that the city is looking into I believe, rent stabilization measure or ordinance, it is an insult to us as renters and a toothless waste of time if it does not include a clear, deliberate rent control built into it. And I also would like to use some of my time to share a comment from another Glendale resident who was not able to be here. So this is Kathleen Kensinger, and she is a single female Vietnam-era veteran, vice president of Glendale Democratic Club, elected member of LA County Democratic Party, and a senior. She says, rent increases are part of life to a renter, but when an almost 30% rent increase comes out of the blue, it is shocking. I've lived in the same apartment for nearly 15 years, and I still have the same paint on the walls and carpet on the floor. I'm appalled that the city of Glendale is not taking care of the renters in the city. The character of Glendale is being taken away by pricing families out, singles and seniors as well, out of the city without any rent control. I'm disappointed in your non-actions in this crisis for Glendale renters. And this kind of segues into what I feel is a very important aspect of this, that above all, economic displacement not only is a form of violence on the people being pushed out, and it has been proven time and again to deteriorate safety and security in the neighborhoods where it happens. Longtime residents who are not afraid to be pushed out are much more invested in their community and much more involved. As such, passing a rent control measure is a no-brainer and a preventative measure, first of all, for safety and security in our city. Landlords, homeowners, renters, and especially law enforcement, public officials, social services officials should be standing together with Glendale Tenants Union if they truly care about public health and public safety. So you have a choice as you move forward with understanding what kind of rent control is appropriate for Glendale. Will you stand with us, or will you allow and legitimize the social and economic violence on the working class folks, the renters in Glendale? And will you treat us, all residents rather, of Glendale equally, or are renters second-class citizens? I was here earlier, and it was great and very educational to hear a lot of the conversations about historical preservation and everything, and that's wonderful. If half that time, quarter of that time was afforded to the real issues that renters have, I think we'd have a much more equitable place. So I ask you to afford real protections to all residents of our city. And I want to conclude by saying that I am a regular voter, and the city council candidate must support rent control to earn my vote. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Next speaker is Rondi Werner.
So I have a slideshow here. Some of you on council, my name is Rondi Werner. I'm president of the Adams Hill Neighborhood Association, and I've lived in Glendale for over 30 years. Some of you, we've mentioned this project to you before, and some of you have even driven over to see it for yourself. But for 14 years, there's been a nuisance in Adams Hill of a project that has never been completed, and we've had it. So let me try to spin everyone else up who isn't familiar with the background of this.
Could you mouse is right in front of you.
Slide? Oh, okay. Oh, excellent. That's even better. Okay. Okay. So the first shot is when Google first started photographing that street in 2007, but the construction actually began in 2003, according to design review records by the first owner. You notice he listed it for sale. You can see the little red sign peeking into the photo there. So it was sold as a half-completed project in 2009. This is the, oops, okay, wow. This is really, okay. Let's see, which direction am I going here? Okay, wow. Can I just click it instead? Okay. Okay, here we go. Okay, so it's sold to the person who owns it to this day. Some people think it changed hands many times. It really didn't. The person who bought it on July 22nd, 2009 is the person who owns it today, over 8 years later. He presented a design review. He didn't want to use the plan that had already been approved. He wanted to completely redesign it, and it was rejected by a design review. They provided at least 17 recommendations, and it was just completely incompatible with the footprint of the neighborhood and everything else. But anyway, so it dragged on. This is it again in 2000. You know, there's no different except the tarp fell. and the neighbor's been looking at that all this time. Oops. Okay. So then, oops, I just fast forward a few years there. Okay. So it's languishing. The weeds growing are about the only difference between that and the previous shot. And then, okay, dang it. I hate this mouse, but anyway.
Where do you want
Okay, so in 2017, on April 20th, the owner was given a permit to build, or a new permit. It's not the first one. This is after many extensions, many deadlines coming and going, and residents were always told, oh, progress is just around the corner, it'll be done soon, framers will be here any minute, that sort of thing. So per the code, they're supposed to, for every 180 days, they're supposed to do 20% worth of progress, and which isn't a lot, but that's the minimum. And so this photo I took on April 3rd, so that was within a couple weeks of it getting the permit. So this is the next one. I think you can tell that there's really no progress that was made. There is this little ramp. I guess it doesn't show up with my pointer very well. That ramp was put in. It doesn't even look safe to walk on, but it's there. And that's really the only difference that people going by. In the meantime, residents are telling me they never see work going on over there. But occasionally after we complain, someone will show up for a couple days until the heat goes down. So next slide. So in the meantime, trash was piling up here. This is a street-to-street lot. So the two photos are on the left were taken from Palmer Avenue. And you can see the erosion, just crap building up, blight. And then the one on the right is what it looks like on Corona. This is just a different view than what I was showing you previously, but you can see that there's nothing going on over here. Next slide. So this is the top picture is what it looked like the year that the present owner took possession, and this is what it looks like over 8 years later. So. But we could use your help. I know City Attorney Garcia has been copied in a lot of these emails, and we were told this was in the City Attorney's hands over 6 months ago when the permit was first given. So we asked that Adams Hill not be sentenced to another 6 months by renewing this permit again, when obviously this project, if he had the means to complete it, he would have by now. He has other projects with expired permits, not just this one. And in fact, his contractor license, I looked on the California website today, it's suspended. So we just asked for your help to free Adams Hill of this nuisance and condemn this property and ask that it be demolished.
Okay. Let me go to, thank you.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have a question. When is the city attorney going to step in? The last time this came to us,
she can't answer that question.
No, I'm not asking her. I'm asking Mr. Lansafane.
Well, the city attorney's right here, so you can
I'm
ask
sorry,
me.
city attorney.
So,
Yeah.
Please take it.
Sorry, I didn't see you in the room.
No,
Sorry.
again, there is a process as has been outlined, and I think you're aware of it. And they do have that 6 month period. I'm not sure what the status of it is now in terms of where they are in that permit. But once they hit that
permit expired last week. On the 20th.
And again, but I don't know within that time if they go and they get their request an inspection to make sure that they hit that 20% mark, then they are entitled to an extension of that. If Mr. Lansafame has more information, as soon as I get more information from my staff, I can forward to the council. But
if you will take a seat, please, because we cannot have two people at the podium, and we don't usually go back and forth.
Ms. Devine, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Ms. Devine, I don't know the exact status today. I will find out first thing tomorrow morning. I do know that there was some engineering that they were working on, but that was some months ago, and I thought this was moving forward. So I will have a status tomorrow morning and confer with the city attorney on next steps.
And I would just add, we certainly understand the frustration, but the process does allow, with the current permit that was issued, there are certain rights to extensions as long as they've met the requirements. So we're trying to work with them to get them to complete that. And if they let it expire, or if the building official determines that it needs to be expired, then after that process, it gets referred to our office.
Can I ask you a question? When you send someone out there to look at the property, do you call the contractor or the owner before they go out there, or do you go out willy-nilly and see people working there? I mean, the neighbors say they don't see people working there. Do our inspectors see people working there?
Typically, the inspector won't go till they're called for an inspection. So they don't go to a site, they don't visit a site until they're scheduled.
Well, since this has been such a problem, how many times have they been here? I mean, at least 4 times. It's been 17 years or 10 years or 12
14.
years. Thank you, 14 years. It seems like we should start sending inspectors out there on a regular basis, and if there is no work being done, then let's...
Again, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Devine, while I understand the sentiment, at the end of the day, the building official has to make the determination based on the work that's done, not how many workers are out on the site. If that were the case, then I imagine a contractor would just bring a bunch of bodies to the site to show the inspector that they're workers. At the end of the day, they have to do based on the work that's been done under the permit. And if it hasn't been done in all candor, if work hasn't been done meeting that 20% threshold, I'm certain the building official will determine to expire that permit because he is aware of the issue very keenly as well.
Okay, as I say, I'll check first thing in the morning.
Thank you.
Quick question.
Do you have a question from...
Is this a private owner, contractor, developer?
Yes.
What yes is the yes.
Well, the city is not involved in any way, so all three are private.
Because it has been mentioned he's doing the same thing other locations.
That I'm not aware of.
I think
I mean, the lady a little bit earlier said the same owner is working the same ways on some other projects. So this can't be a private owner then.
Mr. Mayor, what I would suggest is for us to get proper information on this item and bring it back to council by way of a memo so everybody's on the same page. This item has not been agendized, as you know.
Right.
Understanding that there is a lot of frustration in the community and not minimizing that at all, and understanding that you're also frustrated because you've seen this go on for too long. We will get you the information as soon as possible, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nazafin. Next speaker is Mike Van Gorder.
Mr. Mayor, I just would point out that Mr. Van Gorder spoke during the 3-minute portion. It's your discretion, but...
If I could ask your indulgence, a few of our members did have to leave because they weren't feeling well, and I have a few more comments that they submitted.
Mr. Van Gorder, let me just explain. I'm sure you know, but I want to explain for the public to know. We have 2 sections for public comments. One is in the beginning, which is 3 minutes. We give that the chance to people who want to speak and leave and not wait until the end of the meeting. And if they wait until the end of the meeting, we give them 5 minutes to speak. So since you waited, I'm going to give you another 3 minutes to speak because we let you speak in the beginning, but I want to be fair to you. You waited, but for the future meetings, please, either in the beginning or at the end.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
3 minutes, please.
Again, Mike Van Gorder, one of the captains of the Glendale Tenants Union. I have 2 statements here from our members, one from Rita. I've lived in Glendale for 13 and a half years. The majority of my time, my rent was reasonable, and the city was a lovely retreat from the insanity of LA proper. The past few years have brought unpleasant change to renting in Glendale. Because renters aren't given consideration, my rent has increased over 30% in the past 3 years, a pittance compared to stories I've heard. Requests for repairs result in rent increases, forcing me to forego proper maintenance. Even asking for insurance information after experiencing a serious slip and fall resulted in a rent increase. Glendale renters have become hostages. My rent is more than half of my monthly income, making it impossible to save money towards moving toward a more reasonably priced area. And the idea of homeownership is an unattainable pipe dream. In exchange for the hardship of outrageous rent increases, Glendale offers constant disruption from the construction of luxury apartments. Further, there's frequently an attitude of entitlement from new residents in the luxury apartments. They litter and refuse to clean up after their dogs. Along with that, there's a noticeable increase to the vagrant population, resulting in Glendale's reputation as the jewel city becoming progressively more and more tarnished. I once thought I'd make Glendale my home forever. However, hearing the horror stories of older renters, I realize it's a city I'll need to leave in the coming years. I'm saddened that the majority of the population, tenants, are treated with so little regard by elected officials who are allowing the city to become another ugly, overpriced urban center. And these comments are from Alan Simpson. My name is Alan Simpson. My wife and I have lived in Glendale almost 15 years. I'm a freelance composer working in the television industry, and my income fluctuates. Some months are good, some months are bad. And the current state of the economy certainly hasn't been helping. We moved to Glendale from Studio City after we got married, and we have loved it so much. We now have strong roots, and I feel like Glendale is my new home. However, as new owners move in and buy up existing properties, there seems to be a disturbing trend of buy, renovate, turnover. And as the new owners and builders are moving in, it seems we're losing all sense of what has made this city great in the first place, community and roots. As rents skyrocket, people are being forced out of their homes and are having to move to other cities just to afford to live. My neighbors have lived in my building 25 years, but if the rent continues to increase at this rate, they will certainly have to leave Glendale soon. I think it comes down to what we as a city want our priority to be. Do we want the first priority to be to cater to the wealthiest people Glendale can attract, even if it means forcing out the very people who built this community into what it is today? Or do we want the first priority to be to continue building a place where people will want to raise their families and put down roots and feel confident that they can build a life here with their neighbors? We must do something to stop the skyrocketing rents in Glendale. Otherwise, the very people who make Glendale great in the first place may all have to leave. Please help us make rent control a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last card I have is Dan Brockman.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Dan Brotman. Actually, what I want to talk about now is a request that you extend the comment period for the Grayson EIR for an additional 45 days beyond November 3rd. And a couple reasons for that. I think you all know it's a massive document. If any of you have actually tried to read through it, it takes time. Many people in the community really don't even know about this yet. People are just finding out about it, and really they have not had time to think about it. More specifically, as we look at it, and when I say we, I mean me and people in the Glendale Environmental Coalition, which I've recently set up, but also people that are working in conjunction with me at Sierra Club and at Earth Justice. When we look at it, we're finding new things. For instance, just, 2 days ago, maybe, I realized looking at it that there has been no study of environmental justice. Okay, that was just basically disregarded in the whole EIR. And I'll just quote. It's just this is a side issue, but what it says in the EIR is Glendale is not considered an environmental justice community, and the project would therefore not substantially increase air emissions that disproportionately impact low-income or minority communities in the proximity to the project site. No impact associated with this issue would occur. So that may be true for Glendale overall. I don't think it's true for the community around Grayson. I've reached out to the California Environmental Justice Association, and there seems to be quite substantial evidence that according to the way California determines environmental justice communities, that area is an environmental justice community. So, here's something, and I want to research this more so I can give some serious comments, because this is an area that has not even been studied for potential impact. And the last thing I would mention is that there was a meeting I wasn't able to attend, but the people that I'm working with at Earth Justice and Sierra Club met with Mr. Zern on, I think, the 10th of this month, and had 3 sets of questions that they asked. I'm not faulting them, but we haven't gotten the answers yet. So we thought we were going to get them, and then on the 17th was asked to put them in writing, and they were put in writing on the 17th, and we were told it would be another 10 days. So that's fine, but it just really doesn't give us time to take that input and then turn around and reflect on it and be able to give good comments. So on that basis, I would respectfully ask that you extend that comment period in additional 45 days. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you. That was my last card. And what's next, please?
Well, I'd like to ask Mr. Zern if there's a possibility of giving them more time.
Mr. Mayor, council members, we've got a pretty tight schedule on this. We gave an original 45-day. We held 2 public meetings. Mr. Brotman has commented at both those meetings. The meeting he refers to was a conference call between me and some of my staff members from a member of the Sierra Club and Earth Justice attorney. We are treating that as an attorney-to-attorney issue. Ms. Godinez is dealing with the attorney. She's treating it as a Public Records Request Act, at least in the format of response. So our response, the time that we got the request, is within that period of time. Even though we're not obligated to do that, we are doing that. And so that'll be a timely response. Plus, I answered the questions verbally, so it's a matter of following up with some details to that. I don't see that as in any way delaying. And many of the comments have been redundant, and we've recorded those, and we will continue to answer those. And so, at this point in time, because in this particular case, we gave that 45 days, we notified, we went out, we've held 2 public meetings, very public meetings, to be honest with you. Folks have attended. Mr. Brotman is one, attended both meetings, commented at both meetings, had a lot of time to and they still have time to write in. And we're still getting those kind of comments for the record. So, personally, I think I think we've given quite a bit of time. We have on the MND for the biogas project. We have extended that twice. That was a shorter period of time, and there was some requests from the county on that one. So we did extend that particular one. But this one, I haven't had any other folks say that they haven't had enough time to comment, and the comments have been pretty robust, to be honest with you. So, that's just from where I'm sitting.
And how long this report has been out for public to review and comment?
It's a 45-day to begin with, so we put it out in end of September.
And when is it then? When does the
October 4th? Oh, excuse me, November 4th.
November
3rd.
A couple more weeks.
A couple more weeks. And we've been encouraging folks that we've talked to submit the comments so we get them for the record. Mr. Krause has had quite a few of those. So even folks who just write me an email saying, I have an issue with the project in this regard, I turn that over to Mr. Krause and we put it as official record, even if it isn't submitted that way. So we've tried to go out of our way to make sure that we get all the comments recorded.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
You're adjourned.